This meeting is a public session of the Council Rock Board of School Directors. This meeting is being recorded by the Council Rock School District and may be recorded by members of the audience. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets and red above bursting air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Good evening, Dr. Frazier, School Board of Directors, Administration, and Council Rock community. My colleagues and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening and sing the national anthem. We are so thankful for your support and all that you do for music education. Because of your hard work, Council Rock is able to provide our students with an exceptional music program. Because of your efforts, our students receive quality instruction, facilities, equipment, and resources needed to give our students the best education possible. We appreciate the support you give to our band, choir, and orchestra programs in Council Rock. Because of you, our students had the opportunity to perform in Italy, England, and Scotland this year. Our orchestra students performed at Carnegie Hall in New York City. Our chorus students had a private performance for Michelle Obama at the White House this year. Due to the hard work of our students, parents, faculty, administration, superintendent, and school board, Council Rock has been recognized for the past 6 years as one of the best communities for music education in the nation. In our next piece, the composer specifically references the phrase hopes and dreams. This year, Dr. Frazier brought this mantra to Council Rock in his first weeks as superintendent. It resonated within our community and brings us full circle this evening. We want to thank you for keeping our hopes and dreams alive and all the work you do to nurture and maintain the music program in Council Rock.
To smile upon the sun, be free to dance and sing, be free to sing a song every day. Come, young citizens of the world, we are one, we are one. Come, young citizens of the world, we are one, we are one. We have one am but a small voice, I am but a small tree, to smile upon the sun, be free to dance and sing, be free to sing my song to everyone. Come, young citizens of the world, we are born, we are born. Come, young citizens of the world, we are born, we are born. We have one hope, we have one dream, and with one voice we sing. Give us peace, prosperity, and love for mankind. Give us peace, prosperity, and love for mankind.
I just have to say, you all are good. Really, that's outstanding because you sound so good and because it's uplifting. It's unifying, it's uplifting. We're ending a school year next week. It's hard to believe, but it's next week already. And what an uplifting message. And to see all of you here, what an unbelievable music department we have in CR. 6 times, right, Mr. Rudette? 6 times we've won that award. So we've already given out that accolade to all music educators, past and present, and all student musicians, past and present. But to have all of you here tonight representing this and to choose that particular piece and to perform it so well, thank you. Thank you. Absolutely fantastic. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Block,
I am here.
Mr. Bialik,
Here.
Mrs. Brooks. Here. Dr. Foster,
I expect Dr. Foster here shortly. Is it MIT graduation?
Mr. Grubb,
Present.
Mrs. McKessie,
Here.
Mr. Tate,
Here.
Mrs. Thomas,
Here.
and Dr. Forward.
Here. Dr. Frazier, Superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Block, and good evening, everyone. As mentioned, our last day of school is next week. That's hard to believe, with this only being our first of our 2 June board meetings. But with us only having 1 snow day this year, our last day of school indeed is next Friday, June 10th. So that means we have a total of 6 school days left. So the end of the school year is very, very quickly approaching. And for some of our staff members, there are only 6 days left in their careers here in Council Rock. And that's sad for us, but it's also happy for them. And we had the opportunity earlier this evening to pay our very deep respects and appreciation to 38 individuals who will be retiring this year from the Council Rock School District. And some of those individuals are here in the audience at this moment, and we would like to collectively recognize those folks. Across these 38 individuals, there is a cumulative level of experience in Council Rock alone, withstanding any other experience in any other school district or otherwise, of 899 years. 899 years of experience in Council Rock. So if you would happen to be one of those folks, will you please stand up so we can give you a nice round of applause. Thank you. And again, thank you for doing everything that you have done. We have such an amazing faculty and staff in this school district. We're very fortunate to have the children that we have in this community, and our children are very fortunate to have the adults working in our schools that they have. You all have dedicated 899 cumulative years to them, and we as a community are indebted to you for that. So you leave a lasting legacy, and on behalf of those students, their parents, and this entire school district, we all say thank you to you. Very, very much appreciated. So with deep gratitude.
Thank you.
I will let everyone know from a practical matter that with next Friday being the last day of school, that will be a half day of school for all students, K through 12. At the high school level, not only will next Friday be a half day of school, but next Wednesday and Thursday will also be half days of school. So high schools will have half days of school on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and K through 8, our elementary and middle schools, will have half days of school on Friday only. Our graduation ceremonies will be held, as a reminder, next Friday, June 10th, with Council Rock North beginning at 3 p.m. and Council Rock South beginning at 5 p.m. And finally, from me this evening, I was going to hold off on this until my next meeting because that would be my final meeting concluding my first year here in Council Rock. But I wasn't sure what our audience participation would be, given that the school year would be over and people might be scattered. So I'm going to take the opportunity now to simply say thank you. Because it's been a wonderful first year. Council Rock is a wonderful community. I want to thank our students. I want to thank our teachers, the rest of our faculty and staff, our parents, this wonderful community that we have here in CR, our full administrative team, this cabinet that sits here on these Thursday evenings, and I work very, very closely with, and of course, this board of school directors. We have just an amazing community here in Council Rock. I am very blessed and fortunate to be a part of it. I feel deep gratitude to be a part of it, and I felt that way 11 months ago, and I still feel that way now. And it was important to me that I express that to our community with this first year here ending. So it's been a great year. Very much looking forward to graduation and celebrating with our seniors next Friday. We do still have 6 days to go. We're going to make them 6 good ones. But we're looking forward to finishing up strong and only getting better from here. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll keep on keeping on and looking to even better and brighter days ahead. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frazier. And on behalf of the board, I guess, happy first anniversary.
Thank you.
We'll move to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young children in the audience or watching this broadcast live on CRTV when speaking. It is our goal to maintain a respectful environment so that members of our community have an equal opportunity to address the board without interruption. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your comments or questions. And if the record could please reflect that Dr. Foster is in the house. That was graduation.
It was awesome. Great
Fantastic.
graduation. Yeah.
Good deal.
Mr. Funk was there. Mrs. McCarthy was there. Mr. Scott. So
Excellent.
good turnout from Council Rock.
All right, so Jillian Ames, did I get that right? Ames?
Relieved Dr. Foster has just arrived. Jillian Ames, I live in Newtown, and I am here representing Citizens for Education to discuss the addition of running tracks at the middle schools. This issue recently surfaced at the April 21st board meeting, where there was some discussion at the end of the meeting about the middle school tracks, and then it surfaced again at the May 5th board meeting when Bill Foster commented that he would like to hear more from the public as to what the value of adding the tracks would be. At the same meeting, Board President Andy Block also encouraged the public to let the school board know what they thought. And since that time, we have collectively, Citizens for Education has made an effort to inform the public of this request. We have distributed flyers to various residents asking them about their interest. And not surprisingly to us, There was widespread interest and support from many residents who value the track program for their children and grandchildren. Because this is the end of the school year, activities are winding down, but even so, in only the last 2 weeks at only 2 separate events, we were able to collect over 175 signatures on a petition that I have with me tonight that I'm happy to present to the board in support of adding running tracks to both middle schools. You asked to hear from the public. We are helping you hear from the public, and we're happy to deliver this petition to you tonight and continue our petitions in circulation. I believe if 175 people came to this meeting and all spoke on the same topic, it would probably get your interest. So I'm hoping that you take this petition in the same regard, and that should be enough to indicate that there is support among the community. A strong middle school track program with the appropriate facilities to support it can provide kids with great opportunities. At this time, Citizens for Education is asking the district for the following. 1, that there be a formal presentation at either a school board meeting or another public forum to provide specifics, including a decision timeframe about adding running tracks to the middle schools. 2, that track coaches at the middle and high schools and health and phys ed teachers at the middle schools be consulted as part of the public forum to provide input on how to use the new track facilities and how they could be maximized. And 3, that the CRSD public is informed formally, asking for their input and interest via a district-wide survey. As a reminder, there are various reasons to strongly consider adding track facilities to the middle schools. Track is all-inclusive with roughly 355 middle school athletes participating this year, the highest participation rate of all middle school sports. It is a no-cut sport, so anyone who wants to join can do so. Phys ed and health classes can incorporate the lifelong health benefits of track into their curriculum, reaching every student. Currently, middle school kids have to miss classes to travel to meets at middle schools outside of our district that have track facilities. Athletes will be better conditioned with less chance of injury running on a proper surface. The current practice area at Holland Middle is full of holes and divots that can increase the chance of injury. And a strong middle school track program with proper facilities will benefit our high school programs, as these kids will be feeding into those programs. Let's give our Council Rock students the same opportunities as kids in neighboring districts to excel on and off the track by supporting the inclusion of running tracks at both middle schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Carroll? I have it right here.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. First of all, I'd like to give my warmest congratulations and thank you to all those retirees, both professional and support employees of Council Rock. I have a very special fondness in my heart for support employees who I think this district would not be able to operate without. They are often the first people that parents meet. The first person I ever met in Council Rock just was in the back row, retiring today. She was the secretary at Chancellor School. And believe it or not, back there, without any security, the office was up on the 2nd floor. And that's where the principal and the secretaries were. She then went on to South and is retiring from South. Another is the first person who everyone met when they came to Council Rock's administration building. I don't know who took her place, but there's big shoes to fill there. The third is a person who holds a position which is warm in my heart because I like to follow facilities so much, and she is the facility secretary. And she's been that secretary through many different administrators of facilities. And lastly, but not least, is a woman who was a hall monitor at North. And she really kept the law and order there at North. And the kids loved her. And we, as parents, when we were in the school, we could see how efficiently everything was run there. So I'd like to thank them all and wish them the very best on the retirement. And secondly, I'd like to say that I am in full support of the budget that you're about to look at and vote on tonight. I wasn't able to attend the facilities meeting, but I did listen to it. And I was very impressed and swayed by the remarks made by Ed Tate and Wendy Thomas, and I'm hoping that you'll repeat that to the public tonight to give a reasoning for your vote. At that meeting, some people didn't give any reasoning or which way they were going to go or weren't at the meeting, and I think it's very important because of the numbers that you let people know why you made your decision. And lastly, I have to say that I too am in support of tracks at the middle schools, and I hope that you have that meeting. And several times it was asked if the documents that were given before May 5th would be put up on the web, and they never have been. So I wanted the board to know that I put in a right-to-know request this morning so that I could see what that schematic and the documents look like. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there any further public comment? Tall gentleman in the back, no? All right, we'll move to our first item for board approval. Mr. Grupp, please.
Very good, thank you. I move to approve the purchase, I move to approve the purchase of two, count them, 2014 Ford E250 9-passenger vans from Wolfington Body Company Incorporated at a total cost not to exceed $73,364, subject to audit.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bialik. Making his first appearance in the boardroom. Mr. Rowe, welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions?
This item was discussed at the last board meeting, and through emails, it was, after we got you additional information, it was agreed that we should bring it in front of the board one more time. Andy is here tonight to answer any questions on this agenda item and also the next agenda item about the routing software. But other than that, there has been information provided, additional information provided, and we can answer any questions you might have.
What year will this money come out of? What budget year?
They are both coming out of this current budget year. We've been assured that we can get the vans delivered by June 30th.
And are we expected to be over or under our budget for this year?
In total, we'll
In
be under
total.
the budget.
Excuse me?
We'll be under the budget.
Thank you.
This was also discussed briefly at the last finance meeting as well.
Yes.
No, and I appreciate you bringing it back. This was, and this was subject to their availability, and I guess that's still the case. So to the best of your knowledge, these two vehicles are both still available?
Yes, Mr. Grupp. I reached out to the provider last week, and they said that they're going to keep them on hold for Council Rock.
Let me also just make sure, I'm not sure, Andy, you and I had a separate conversation about this, and I don't know that it's in the document that was provided. These vans are a 2014 van. They've never been titled. They're fresh, factory fresh, and they're also of a style that we're familiar with the operation of. This style of van has been discontinued and is no longer being offered. And some of the newer vans that replace it have not had a proven service history that we've been able to that Andy has seen demonstrated. So in part, one of the reasons for going with these as well is they're a proven commodity to us. They're brand new. They're good, relatively good price. And it will give Andy a chance in working with his cohorts in related school districts to monitor some of the newer vans that are coming out, which may or may not have some of the same, may or may not hold up as well as these. So I appreciate that insight, and I'll be supporting this tonight.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe or Mr. Reinhardt? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Bialik?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks? Yes. Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grupp?
Yes.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
And Dr. Thorpe?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes 9-0. Ms. McKessie, number 2, please.
I move to approve the transportation routing contract and software license agreement with TransFinder as contained in the attachments to this agenda at a 3-year cost not to exceed $73,845, subject to audit and final solicitor review.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
Again, this is something that we did go over at the finance meeting, and you did receive a memo describing the need for the new software, and also Andy, what he has done with his due diligence to determine this is the best software for the situation. And again, Andy is here to answer any of your questions. He knows this much better than I do.
This is also being funded out of the 2015, 2016.
Yes.
And would you remind us how the cost for this new software compares to the software that we're currently using? Should we choose to continue with that?
All right, so the current software that we're using is Edulog NT, and the cost annually is $11,600. Unfortunately, we host it locally, and all the bids that we have are for them to support and host it for us and ongoing training. So it'd be difficult to compare apples to apples with it. For us to take Edulog NT and get a service package with it, it would be an addition of $20,000. So we're packaging at $15,000 and hosting at just a hair over $5,000, bringing the total to about $31K a year.
Andy, could you just give us a brief discussion of why you think this particular package is valuable and what you think it'll do for your management of our transportation?
Yes, so currently we're using an outdated system, and unfortunately the maps over the years have been hand-drawn, so they're not accurate. So with this new software, all three providers would get the county maps and the surrounding maps and create a new district attendance boundaries for us that's more accurate. What separates TransFinder from their competition is they use exact mapping. So the two other providers, they use address ranges, and that's what we use today. And unfortunately, when you use address ranges, a house could be on the wrong side of the intersection, causing difficulties when we route. So another difference is just how efficient it is. So over the last 10 years, they've made huge strides in routing software. Unfortunately, we've been left behind. And for that reason, it takes us 2 to 3 times longer to complete some of the most simple tasks. Along with that, we'll be able to do studies with attendance boundaries, bell times, changing of grades at certain schools. So it's very robust and dynamic, and we won't have to outsource that function to consultant or anything like that. We'll be able to handle that internally, along with TransFinder support.
Will you be able to handle that? Will you be the primary user?
Yes, there'll be 2 primary users, myself and Chuck Rem, the coordinator.
Okay.
And with that, we'll be trained, and we hope to get certified through them. And then all the ongoing training is provided at no additional cost. And they have an online university and phone support.
So I guess this is a little bit for you, a little bit for Bob, maybe a little bit for Dr. Frazier. My assumption is, as we look to open a middle school in 1819, we certainly need to do some redistricting. The board has many, if not most, if not everyone, has expressed a significant. What I hear you saying, if we said, oh, we want to look at putting a 5th grade center together, which was an idea I've talked about, and then seemed like it would be massive amounts of logistical work, you believe that this system will allow you to do that analysis in a shorter, more reasonable amount of time?
Compared to what we have today, absolutely. And I think with the assistance of TransFinder and what I've heard from some of their current customers, that they're doing it today. Those
Okay.
are the type of activities that other districts are doing with TransFinder, Versatrans, but unfortunately with our current system, we're not able to do it efficiently.
So this is an investment in our ability to do efficient and accurate redistricting along with this efficient use of schools. This system will allow you to do that efficiently.
Absolutely.
And I assume Mr. Rowe will be on that committee or, working with you on that project?
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Grubb?
Without a doubt. I would just, if I
Sorry,
may.
yeah, go ahead, please.
I think part of the value of this as well, before we even get to redistricting, is just looking at how we're currently configured or however we end up configured. Andy has mentioned this previously around bail structures. Right now we're set up how we're set up, and that results in a certain reality in terms of when kids come to school and what their school day looks like, and there's a financial reality that follows that. There are other ways of looking at how that can be done.
Okay.
We don't have a good way currently to even have good data to look at, to be able to look at the analytics and to be able to go through the processing of that. This system will enable that. So there are school districts who have gone about that in a different way that I know in a district around our size has saved upwards of $1 million on an annual basis by looking at their bell systems in a different way. That may or may not be possible for us, but right now we're not even
But we don't even
in a
know.
place that we can even really take an honest look at it. Yeah, because we just don't have good data to be able to look at.
Andy, what's the learning curve?
I was,
Yeah,
sorry,
Mr.
real
Rupp.
quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Andy, we currently have a license, or we license or rent Decision Insight. Can you speak to how this either replaces Decision Insight or interfaces with Decision Insight? Or does it, so can we get rid of one or the other? Have we explored that?
I haven't explored that. I don't know as much about Decision Insight. That's not a tool I use regularly, but from my understanding, once you create the attendance boundaries for the schools, you have the information you need to power something like a school locator, from my understanding. Currently, I believe Decision Insight, the data that we use was through Edulog NT, and for that reason, it's not 100% accurate. You got to keep in mind that they've drawn streets over the years, and it's not today's current county map. And that's something that we'll gain from this whole process, is having an accurate map of the district and attendance boundaries. And there is a chance that it could be replaced, I think, if we're only using it for that function.
And that's what I wanted to call to your attention, the board's attention, which is I'm very agreeable to this. I have a few more questions around it. I'm very agreeable to this, but I don't want to lose sight of Decision Insight, which is an ongoing clock, which we pay for it annually. There's some discount rate, but if we can terminate it, we will save money, about $11,000 a year. Now on to some other questions around this. First of all, this contract, the rate that's in here is good through June 30th, as long as we sign by June 30th, right?
That's correct, sir.
Very good. I had called to your attention, as I had to Mr. Cox and the inclusion of Mr. Frederickson, a few issues with this contract. Some, I believe, are within the purview of the solicitor to make and protect the interests of the district, and the others are more managerial than maybe within the scope of Mr. Cox's experience. All due deference to Mr. Cox in terms of a business practice. One, there are no documents within this that pertain to the protection and confidentiality of the data that's entered onto this system, and the agreement of the company that we're providing it to, who's hosting it, not to use or misuse the data. That would be a requirement, and I believe Mr. Cox can adequately account for that in the contract. The aspect that I'm not so sure about, because it is a business decision, relates to something relevant to service level agreements. We look at this contract, and this contract doesn't speak to its availability or guaranteed uptime or duration. Now, Matt, if you have further conversation around this, I'd appreciate that. But that's a concern to me. It's great to have software, but if you need it in August and it's down for a week or two at that time, or at the beginning of September, it's a problem. And I'm not saying that it would be, but I would expect some remuneration or some protections around that. And I just wonder, Matt, you've had some conversation.
Andy and I discussed it today. He's contacted the vendor and asked them for a copy of the SLA. I'm assuming it'll be to us in the next day or two, but we've asked for their SLA.
And that's the reason I asked about the June 30th date, because I trust Mr. Cox to have the protection of the interests of the district with regard to confidentiality of the data, but I don't know. Go ahead, Wendy. You're
What's
looking at me
SLA? I'm sorry.
Service level agreement.
Okay.
It has to do with in buying computer services. It speaks to availability of the system, not accuracy, but that you agree it's going to be available. If you buy the telephone service,
Performance guarantees.
it is
what I would call
it is.
But yeah.
And there's a penalty included in it that if it isn't up for a certain duration
Okay.
of time, you get it back in an
I
accelerated
just wasn't
rate.
familiar with the language, SLA.
Sorry, that it's not in there is concerning. As I say, I trust Mr. Cox to take care of the protection of our student information. This is confidential information. There are aspects of this information which may border on FERPA because it regards students with disabilities who are being picked up and transported. So for me, I'm supportive of it. Our time frame is not, Andy, if you didn't get it if we didn't sign a contract at June 30th, would that, or closer to June 30th, before June 30th, would that present a problem? We have another meeting in June, do we know?
Well, it says solicitors review.
Rob Cox's expertise
Oh, you want the SLA?
I'm interested in what the SLA is. Rob Cox's expertise is, and I trust him for this, around the protection of the data. It's a matter of, I guess I could defer to Matt, but, and maybe I'll say I will, but I think it's important for the board to understand that that's an important aspect when you buy software.
So Jerry, we can make the motion subject to review by the administration's IT staff as well if we want to.
I would appreciate that, Andy. I think you understand that I don't want you to be in a spot come August when you're moving things and shifting things and finding it's unavailable, and we have no, oftentimes the SLA, the money back will help us pay for the sources, the manual sources to help do the job.
So Mr. Grupp, so you know that I forwarded revisions to Mr. Reinhardt earlier in the week, I think on Tuesday. And I think the reason that you see solicitor review in the motion is because the vendor hasn't probably had a chance to review my revisions or review.
They have not responded.
Right. So, but the nature of my revisions were a tweak to the warranty provision to make sure that the software performs as marketed by the vendor to the district. I made a change to the provision with respect to a limitation on TransFinder's liability in the event it were to act negligently. I added a standard 90-day termination for convenience provision, which I have repeatedly recommended. I've beaten that horse to death. I have also added an insurance provision and changed the choice of law provision from New York to Pennsylvania. I also recommended to Mr. Reinhardt that the district attach its standard rider, which has fairly comprehensive confidentiality language, which speaks specifically to student records and FERPA records as well. So those were the revisions I had suggested before I received your email, and then I understand Mr. Frederickson will be able to speak to the business issue that you've raised. So that's where things are.
Very good. I appreciate that. Having not seen the correspondence after my query, we had a brief hallway conversation about it. Then I'll agree to it. What with the protections that we changed the motion to include.
So Ms. McKessie, will you amend your motion to include the IT review?
Yes. And acceptance.
And second,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas, yes, thank you.
Lastly, on this topic, is there an acceptance installation period? Meaning that when they install it, is there an acceptance period that we will look at it before we begin payment? Or what's the payment structure? Is it paid? I see the first payment is due, $28,000 is due by June 30th. But if it is not an acceptable installation, if there's some problem, is there a pro rata perspective to this, Mr. Cox, that you've added?
No, although I felt comfortable with the warranty language with respect to the issue that you raised as I've revised it. So in other words, the software has to perform upon sale as marketed and represented by the vendor. I felt as though on balance that adequately protected the district's interests.
That's fine. I guess I understand your point in terms of this space. It's normally a more formal sign off, but I'll defer to your thoughts on that. Thank you. Then I'll be accepting it tonight, but I will be voting for it this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Ms. Brooks?
So I'm just wondering what the learning curve is on this new system. I mean, if this passes all the reviews and everybody's okay and it's purchased by June 30th, is this what you'll be using in the fall?
Next fall. So we're going to run the systems parallel to make sure that there's no issues with the migration. It's also going to take them time to create the maps. And also for us, at this point, we're already planning ESY and working on next year. We're too late in the process to do it for this fall. It'll be the next fall. So kindergarten and first grade registration for the next year will go in the new system along with ESY, which in my mind is like a soft launch for the full school year. So I think over the next 6 months, we'll become very familiar with the routing and planning side of it. And then as we go through registration process, get more familiar with the integration with our student information system. And then along the way, bring in the trip management part of it. Currently, we're using Excel spreadsheet to manage that and better track what we're doing on that side. And then from there, once we're comfortable, then we start going into the bell time analysis and everything like that. And of course, if there's we need to move that up a little bit in the process, we can. And they have a very good customer support group that was highly recommended by everybody I spoke to. So I'm confident.
That's very important. So the data in the edgelog, how does that actually migrate into the new system? Is that like, is it a system that easily exports out of one and imports into the other, or is that a lot of manual work? Because the maps are going to be all different, like it.
They're going to create a new map for us, and I would say it was fairly easy, but I didn't do anything with it. So during this process, I required all the vendors to use Council Rock data to do the presentation. I didn't want to see Texas. I didn't want to see Virginia. So I gave them the edgelog data, Versatrans, who's Tyler Technologies, TransFinder, and edgelog. They all used our data. So from the migration side, it seems seamless. That's something that they handle. That's part of their year one responsibilities.
Okay, so that's part of the, it's all included.
Yes, the number, that's 73,000, that's the all-in. Ongoing is, I think, 12.7 a year on the fourth year, but the first 3 years include all the startup, the transition, and the 3 years of hosting, licensing, and support.
And do you foresee any other costs outside of the 73,000 that you would incur next year?
Based on what I've discussed with TransFinder and Upper Moreland, I would say no. Upper Moreland only saw increases in their rate when they added services. Even the customized reporting came at no additional cost, and there's no annual increase or CPI language in this agreement. So for the first 3 years, we're locked. So I feel comfortable saying there should be nothing unless we add a new piece of technology to it.
I apologize if you mentioned this before, but just for clarification, that 73,000 as an aggregate over 3 years, not $73,000 a year. Correct.
Correct.
So it's $24,000 a year, 24.5, and we're currently paying what?
We're paying $11,600 a year for just the software. We have very little customer support, and we're hosting it locally. And to compare customer support, I think about 75 to 80% of the calls were handled within an hour. I called edgelog pretty regularly, and it's not uncommon for it to take 3 to 5 days for a return call and a resolution. When I spoke to them about it, they said they felt good about 24 to 48 hours, and
okay.
I did not feel good about that.
Dr. Foster?
Yeah, thanks. So when you do these routes, you can trade off all kinds of things, right? You can trade off the time that the student's on the bus versus how many buses you have and try to optimize fuel. So, I mean, you could optimize different things, and I imagine the software and the time using it becomes a kind of a mixture of a science and art, I would guess. And so with this new software, just, you know, aside from things like fifth grade centers or redistricting and all that, just that optimization piece of making the routes better in the sense of how many buses and how much time and how much fuel. Do you think it moves the needle there to have this software? Do you think, given the size of our, I mean, it's not like, you know, an extra penny per ton, you know, makes a big, we're not doing a national wide fleet, but does it matter?
I think so, because with this software, you're able to load different, I think a lot more parameters into it, looking at load count, looking at transit times, also looking at walk distance to stop. So currently with edgelog, I recently asked them, what is the average walk distance to the stop? Because, you know, we have a lot of stops out in the district. We service this district quite well from a transportation standpoint. That report took 2 weeks, and I think once I have to calculate, it doesn't come in, it doesn't total it up. I think that their walk distance is close to maybe 0.4 of a mile. You know, obviously, according to policy, it's a much greater number. And those are the type of things I think with this new software we'll be able to do a lot more quickly, is understand how far are they walking, clearly identifying some of the hazards out there, because it will be, you know, a map that we can load all of our conditions into. And currently it's just a white screen with red lines for roads.
So you probably get into situations where a child is walking, there's some hazards, and the way you find out about it is the parents complain, and then you start, you know, driving out there looking, and then you reroute the bus. It's very, very time consuming.
Yeah. So with Edulog, there's like two sides of it. You can go more on a tabular look or display, but you can't do both at once. So you either look at a drawing and make the edit, or you know the district very well and you're able to load it into their Maris map program. So it's very complicated the way it is right now.
And will it help us know what our miles per gallon of propane are?
I saw that one coming.
I knew it because you expected it. I had to deliver.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll definitely give us a better idea on how many miles we're incurring on the routes. I wish it would give us that MPG number in a format that is easier to.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Sounds great. Sounds like it'll really help you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe?
I've got one.
Dr. Thorward.
This is the first time I've seen transportation come in and ask for technology at all. So you're really using 10-year-old software to route our buses now?
How old is it, Matt?
You're being very generous, Dr.
Yeah, really,
Ford.
it's 15 or more. Come sooner the next time. That's
He didn't work
To
here
be
last
fair,
year.
he just started. I came on my 10th month. Been studying it since my 4th month.
Well, that's excellent. Appreciate the hard work. Another smart investment we're able to put in this year that's going to save us, sounds like a significant amount of money. More importantly, your time and capacity of the staff over time. So great work, guys. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bartlett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grupp?
Yes.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
And Dr. Thorward?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes. Congratulations. Well done,
Thank you very
first time
much.
in.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you again.
All right, absolutely.
Mr. Tate, could you please read number 3?
Give me a second, please. Number 3. I move to approve the graduate listings as contained in the attachments to this agenda, pending completion of all graduation requirements.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Foster.
I have a question.
You have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Graduation projects, we're still doing them. Is that right?
Graduation projects.
Yeah.
No, I believe we eliminated graduation projects with the advent of the Keystone exams. Is that correct, Mr. Desko?
Beginning next year, this is the last year with the graduation project because this current
Yes,
graduating
with the
class
of
did not.
2016.
Correct.
Yes,
So this is it. This is the last year with the graduation project.
that's right.
Okay. How'd they go?
They go well every year. They're
That's
they're
right.
done through the teachers. Students select the teachers that they want to work with to do that grad project, and it's done on a more of an individual basis. But they're pretty interesting projects.
So, I mean, do you
Most of them
think,
do it in 10th grade.
Yeah, 10th grade.
Yes.
Most of them complete in 10th grade.
but they're not going to have
English.
to do that in the future, right? Yeah. So are we going to miss it, do you think? No? Not going to miss it?
They're still doing, the grad projects were like an add-on extra component to something that was already existing in any class. So a student can choose what subject area to do. So it's the initial project, if you were doing a 10-page paper and a presentation on something in an English class, to make it a grad project, it added like another visual component and a couple more pages. The original assignment still exists, so they're still doing that.
Great, thanks.
And I'll tell you, the interesting piece as we face this $14 million deficit this budget season is that when, what was it now, 3 years ago, when the Pennsylvania Department of Education introduced the Keystone exams as a graduation requirement, and folks like me and many other folks across the Commonwealth fought back on the Keystone exams as a graduation requirement from a financial lens. The rationale that came out of the department was, well, yes, you have to do this, but it should take the place of the graduation project. And we all said, but wait a minute, these things don't cost the same. And we all know that these two things do not cost the same. So, Director Brooks, to your comment, these two things clearly do not cost the same because we see all the retakes, all the supplemental instruction, the project-based assessments, and all the costs that are going into it, the Keystone exam process right now, and which is why the moratorium is there, et cetera. But yeah, it sounds like we've done a very good job. with the graduation project as a school district. But as it stands right now, this is the final year.
We added doing this, approving the graduates. I'm not sure why we bothered with this, because I think it was done in parallel in that we approved the early graduates. So I don't remember it being a requirement of law that we do this. Was it, Mr. Cox, or was it not?
That's a good question. It certainly doesn't hurt. The school code speaks to the power to confer academic degrees and diplomas residing with the Board of School Directors. So I certainly don't think it hurts, Mr. Grubb.
Just wondered, Dr. Fraser, in your experience, did you see this before in your previous?
This is the first time I've seen it.
Just wondered. I don't think it costs much to do. I just wondered about it.
I certainly don't think a graduate would have any problem demonstrating that their diploma is legitimate without this board vote.
My bigger concern, Mr. Cox, was that one person would go, well, Bobby so-and-so, I don't want to, that would be my bigger concern.
I don't think it hurts.
Hearing no objections, I would ask the board secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Congratulations to our seniors, and we'll look forward to seeing them next week. Dr. Thorwart, if you could please read number 4.
I move to approve the revised 2016-17 school calendar as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. I'm going to take this one. After spending some time at one of our elementary schools, also one of our middle schools on primary election day this year, and over time hearing an increasing number of concerns from the community as well as our staff, and then hearing from the administration that we continue to see an increasing number of absences on primary day, I took the liberty of asking Dr. Fraser about the implications of closing all of our schools on primary election day in the future. Additionally, I heard conversation from other board members about complications at some of our other facilities. Understanding from Dr. Fraser that the implications aren't significant, I've asked him to recommend the calendar change that we're covering this evening, and I'm hopeful that my peers will support this change. I believe it's the right thing to do from a safety perspective, but also as well being responsive to the feedback of our community and our staff. So I'd be happy to hear any comments or questions. Dr. Mr. Bobby?
Yeah, what's unsafe? Or first of all, answer this question for me. Are we only talking about primary election day? Are we talking
Our
about
calendar next
primary
year,
and general?
we're closed on general election day.
Okay. What's unsafe about holding the elections at the school? You mentioned safety, so I'm just curious what's unsafe about it.
I think it's another opportunity where we have, our population of citizens in the school building at the same time we have our students. We've managed it well in the past. We have not had any issues. I'd liken it to the decisions that we made on Wrightstown. We didn't have a track record of safety issues with the trailers, but a safety issue nonetheless to have kids outside, and we made that choice. So that's what I tell you.
So my feeling is this, and I let this, I talked about this to some of the other members of the board, but, I served Newtown Township as constable for 17 years, so that's 34 elections that we had to man the polls. We have a constable assigned to each election polling place. Not once in those 34 election periods, 17 years, did we have any kind of safety issue at the polling place. Not once. The election process is the foundation of our democratic society that we have here. And I think it's important for our children to see that process. I think the people that come out and work the polls and who vote are patriots, and the children should not be shielded from them, but they should be taught to look up to them. I remember being a Council Rock student, and when it was election day, our teachers would take us out to the polls, and we'd look at the sample ballot with the little levers, and we had a civics lesson there. And I think it's a terrible, terrible thing to be driving our kids away from.
Mr. Grubb, from my perspective, one, unfortunately, I also worked the polls. It was not my poll this year. It was not a school. And I saw a level of discourse between at least 2 individuals at the poll that did raise concerns about the ire some people have and the fervor that some people have amongst themselves. That's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern around the schools, using the schools as a polling place, actually has nothing to do with what happens inside the polls. My concern is the roadways to and from the school. We have people who are not familiar with the schools, driving around the facilities at different times. They're not necessarily aware where the children will be. We have at one school this year, the person who was supposed to be inside, making sure that there was a barrier or there was at least an administrative person separating polling place from students, so the students couldn't wander independently and the voters couldn't wander independently, couldn't be on that post because they had to go outside and administer problems in the parking lot. So from my perspective, that is the larger. I don't believe we face an overt hazard to people, to children at the schools or to employees at the schools. I think the more is the subtlety of people who aren't familiar with driving around the properties. They don't know where to go on the property, and I'd hate to have an incident between children, staff, or buses and our visitors. So for me, when it comes down to it, I appreciate the involvement or the thought about how important the democratic process is, but this is a minor change, and I'll agree to this one. Dr. Thorwart?
Yeah, Mark, I was one of the people that actually pushed for a delay for just during the construction phase. I got to witness what we're going to kind of see between Holland and Hillcrest, and I got to witness that buses have to come into the same lot that we want to put voters in. And for me, safety is not an issue. Students safe, the kids are safe. I'm not, Robert's got this handled. There was a period of time in the middle of the day when voters could not park to vote at Hillcrest because the buses had to be there. And so for me, it was a voter, we were impacting voters more than students. It became a real problem. I got to witness it. I got to watch while I picked up my son, and it's a mess. I would be happier if we could fix that, but while we're doing the construction, I didn't see that happening. So I'd like to see the kids in school when we vote too, for the same reason you do. But for a couple of years at those two schools, I did push for a change. So
Can I just
I'll own up
respond
to
that? Yeah, can I just respond to that real fast? I agree with you 100%. During construction, we can do a workaround, something like that. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think we're setting a blanket policy. We're going to be closed on primary election day because it's unsafe for these kids to be anywhere near the people who come in and vote and work at the polls. I think that's absolutely improper.
And I'll concur with you. I agree.
Dr. Foster?
I agree with my two colleagues here, but the wrinkle that I'm not clear on is we want people to vote. So if it's historically has it been a half day or a full? It's been a half day. So I never know the folks that I think have the most difficulty voting are parents with kids, I think, and so I just don't know whether making a change like this makes it harder or easier for them to vote. I am concerned about setting a precedent. I agree that the construction is a valid concern, but it doesn't set a precedent. It's just reacting to a couple of schools because we have a lot of other polling places. I don't have an easy answer. I just think it is a big deal. It is the foundation of democracy. You want it to be the best it can be, and I don't have a clear picture in my mind of what that is. But making a change quickly in response to a concern that I'm not concerned about is not where I'd want to go. So I wish we could think. I would like to think about it more before voting yes. I'm not sure that this is the road to go down. I mean, maybe it would make things better for voters. Maybe it would, and I just don't quite have it figured out.
Ms. Brooks?
I just want to point out that the civics lesson, it's not that one day or nothing. The civics lesson of voting and what elections mean take place in all of our schools in a large period of time leading up to the election. The other thing is, and I don't know, Barry, maybe you know, if next year's the case, but it used to be in general election years and the even numbered years when it was when senators, governors, president, our school district as a whole participated in kids voting, which was bring your parent to vote day. And that was completely separate from anything in the school. It was an independent effort, and it actually historically had brought increased voter turnouts. And so there are mock elections, debates, discussions of all kinds, age appropriate, happening throughout our schools, all throughout the months leading up, particularly in a presidential year. And that's like, Wendy, you probably know this too, from in the high school, kids may be wondering when to take the government class. They all want it in these big years because the curriculum is particularly attuned to it. So, I mean, the issues of everything that was discussed are certainly not lost, and they're all valid. But I don't want to characterize that by taking this away in this day. The lessons and the things that our students can learn in an election year are lost, because there's plenty of that going on. The other thing is, and I don't know if my memory is right, but historically, I think I remember when my kids were younger, we were closed on those days.
We were.
The making it of it at a day in session was relatively later. Both of those days were off. So it's to address the issue of whether or not, it leaves, does it come back? I mean, that did happen in the life cycle of my students. But that half day was also a conference day for the middle school. So, it was a half day of school in the afternoon was middle school conferences. How would that be accommodated if we, or are they just going to figure that out afterwards?
Yeah, so we had a administrative meeting yesterday, or once a month, full administrative team meeting yesterday. Mr. Desko led that meeting, so I would invite him to speak to this issue as well. But we put different options on the table in terms of where to place, in particular, the half-day in-service day, because that's what was tagged on to that day. It was not a high school issue, but it was an elementary issue as well as a middle school issue. The middle school issue is where they share the portfolios, and the elementary issue is where they build their class lists. And so we had some excellent conversation as an administrative team, and ultimately we decided to place that day where we currently have a high school half-day in-service day on January 20th. As we think about professional learning, professional development, and the totality of time that we have or that we don't have, and how we can best use time overall in alignment with our priorities to place those 3 or 3.5 hours on January 20th and accomplish those objectives some other way, with some level of revisiting of those objectives as well, but accomplishing those objectives some other way.
So you're saying the elementary and the middle school would have a half day, same day as the high school?
So January 20th.
So I think that's a
would be
great idea,
half day,
personally.
Friday, January 20th. So we would still be adding on a day to the end of the school year
Yep.
because we need 180 student days, but it would add an actual professional development day, K to
So
12 on January 20th.
I would say a couple things as my personal opinion, and I agree with everyone else. Everybody's made good and valid points, but for me, primary day absolutely was off years ago. The single best civic lesson I think kids get are when kids come with their parents to vote. And I see a lot more of it on election day than I do when the kids are in school half a day. And I actually think the kids are shielded when they're in school half a day much more than exposed. That's just my viewpoint. I don't think there's right and wrong. Not some big safety. I'm worried about them being near voters. I'm actually, they're barred off with a gate down on election day to stay in a part of the school where the voters are not. That's a much more, not the lesson we would, ideally want, but because we have people coming and going, we have to, by law, keep them separate. I don't think it's some major decision. If we do it for a couple of years and we want to bring it back, we bring it back. We've done it before. I don't look at this as long-term. For next year, between the school construction that's going on, and also, I think them having election day off, my kids know when it is. If they go to school like every other day, they don't even, when they're in elementary school, they don't even recognize it. So in some ways, to me, it makes it a bigger deal that I like, a message that I like.
I think parents are more inclined to vote when their kids are in school and their kids do miss that opportunity. In other words, I think people take advantage of the time to go to the polls by themselves in some cases. And if you alter that in some fashion, I think it would probably, parents are forced to take their children with them, and that's a great civics lesson, as everybody has said. I do feel that we received enough emails, particularly at schools where parking is limited, even separate from construction, but where parking is limited. Those kindergarten dismissals seem to have been a bit bumpy this year, I'm sure because of higher voter turnout than we have had in past years. To Bill's point, I don't want this to go away forever. I think we could certainly sit here this time next year and reevaluate and get input from administration as to what the day looked like. And was it easier on kids and administrators, or do you feel kids missed something?
I'm just also add, if this meant adding a day and then like making the last day of school a Monday, like that, it would just feel different because, you know, and granted you don't know about the snow, but the fact that we're moving the last day of school from a Wednesday to a Thursday and all the other things, it makes sense to me.
So I think it got added after we had a bad snow year and we were desperate to find days thinking that we were going to continue to have bad snow years.
Well, and then maybe it does get added in.
Right, if we have if we have another winter next year like we had a few years ago.
I would love to have next year a much broader conversation about the calendar. Because for me, certain issues in how we develop this calendar have always been problematic. For example, I would love to be able to announce every year, this is the day of your graduation. There are school districts, because I've looked at this, that have calendars that build their snow days in a different way. So if it snows, like there are certain swing days. If it doesn't snow, you'll get this day off. But if it does snow, that day is on. And this is your first day, this is your last day. And I think it's easier for people planning vacations. It's easier for people who have families traveling in for graduation and want to make travel plans. I mean, we don't set our graduation date until April. If some families are blessed to have grandparents and family members that are traveling in and have to make flight arrangements, you're not making it until April. That gets expensive, it's complicated. So I would like to see a much broader conversation to see if we can do multiple years at a time and a different approach to anchor those dates, because I think it's possible.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grupp?
Yes.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Bialik?
No.
Motion passes 8-1. For the next, we've got two. Is there anybody who has an objection to taking both of those together? Ms. Brooks, would you please read number 5?
I move to award athletic uniforms, supplies, and equipment bid 16-09 for the school year 2016-2017 to 19 vendors listed in the total low acceptable bid column at a total cost not to exceed $132,350.20, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tate.
So,
No, it's a double. It's a
Then
double.
second, I'm sorry.
Keep going.
are we separate?
Yeah, no, keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. I also move to award the two Boston UP 118S piano bid number 1635 to Jacobs Music Company, Inc. at a total cost not to exceed $12,616, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bialik. You're slid in there first. Any questions for Mr. Reinhardt, I would imagine?
One of these is for next year. I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
No, go ahead. You're sorry. You're sorry.
One of these motions is for money in next year's budget.
Yes, the athletic uniform, supplies, and equipment.
So even though we haven't approved the budget yet, we're approving expenses for next year?
We're approving the bids, and we've done that for other bids also.
The bids, not the actual purchases.
Right.
Got it.
That was the discussion last time, remember?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
Dr. Thorwart.
That was my question. Are we doing the same thing as before?
See, thank you, Mike, thank you.
Well, I want to be clear.
You make me
because-
feel like an
because we-
idiot.
We're
we
going to
did
get
it
to the
last
budget
time.
discussion soon enough here.
Mr. Grupp will make me feel like an idiot.
I went to,
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So seldom that I get to do that. because I actually looked through it, and interestingly enough, we had listed there an item which was emblazoned for a building that we may not be using in 2 years or 3 years. And so I spoke with Mr. Reinhardt, and we corrected. That's fine. I think it is interesting to note, by the way, I look at the pianos. I was interested because, and Mike and I had a conversation about the bid list in general, and it will be an interesting discussion. We'll get into this at some time in the near future. Talks about the do not substitute on many of the bid list items. And I was interested to know how the Boston piano plays, no pun intended, how the Boston plays off against the Yamaha, because many schools have the Yamaha. You know, it is an interesting thing when you look at it. It is slightly more expensive than the Yamaha piano, but when you read all the reviews, it's a much superior instrument. It is interesting to note that it is not a Steinway. It's no longer made in this country. It's now made in Indonesia. But I don't think you can find a piano built in this country for under $20,000, under $30,000. So just interesting commentary, but we do need to look at on all the bid specs. We need to start to understand the do not substitute and whether it's material or preferential, what way does that play? And that's something we can look at as we go forward.
Mr. Tate, did you have something? No? Anybody else? All right, hearing no objections, I would ask, well, we can do unanimous consent minus Mr. Bialik, right?
Correct.
I would ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent minus Mr. Bialik. And we'll move to number 6, Ms. Thomas.
I move to approve the personnel actions as contained in the attachments to this agenda.
Second.
Is that number 6? Did you guys sleep? You guys snuck something in.
No, there was a double. 5 was a double.
No, I've got a hard copy that goes straight to the budget. Okay. I'm on the live copy now. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Brooks, second.
Oh, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Trioli? Okay, hearing no objections, I'd ask the secretary to pass the motion with unanimous consent minus Mr. Bialik. And now we will move to number 7. Ms. Thomas.
I move to approve the Council Rock School District 2016-2017 fiscal year budget and tax resolution with a tax increase of 2.4%, equating to 2.76 mils as contained in the attachment to this agenda and subject to final solicitor review.
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. McKessie. Mr. Reinhardt, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I think hopefully this is the end of a long, tense, difficult budget session. And I want to thank everybody for their hard work and support you've given us through the process. I'm going to make a very limited comments tonight since we've been over this so often. But as I start, I just want to go over where we are this year. The preliminary budget that was adopted at the second board meeting in April, and what our final budget is. So you will see the major changes that we have here. Local sources went up by $58,000, state sources went up by $286,000, and so on and so forth. And you'll see the adjustments we also made to expenditures, and I'm going to go over the specifics of that. But a lot of that is the netting out of healthcare costs increasing and the 18 retirements. So now the use of fund balance, the number is going from $5.2 million. Now we're at $4,338,000. The number is a little less than what I was projecting at the finance meeting. Once I put all the numbers in and reconciled everything, I think we're down using maybe $40,000 or $50,000 less fund balance than what I had shown you at the finance meeting. But it's after I've reconciled everything and everything's been put together. So on the left-hand side, this is the changes in the revenues. And I will tell you, you see that real estate taxes rounding. That is something that this 2028, the PDE 2028 does not calculate the real estate tax the way I'd like it to calculate it. So I have to put a rounding factor in, and you'll see that in my budget. But when you're looking at a $140 million budget number, that is very much rounding. So you can see the rest. Delinquent taxes, we increased by 100,000. Interest earnings, we increased. And those are also the increases now with the distribution, with the governor's budget that was, the state budget that was passed for the 90 2015-16 budget. So that's the money we're getting this year, and we're counting on next year that we receive it also. There are some differences, and we talked about finance, about where the hold harmless starts now and ends. So some of these numbers could be a little different than the impact that we talked before. State share of Social Security and retirement, that is in the impact of the retirements. We're paying less salaries, therefore we're paying less retirement and Social Security, so the state is contributing less to us. Healthcare, that is the number that came out after I increased the premiums based on the third look, 24-month third look. If you remember, we talked about that at a Finance Committee meeting. And finally, the gross retirement savings. Understand that you saw over like $900,000. That is the net amount. So that would be taking these two numbers and this number and subtracting it out. That's why the expenditure side went down more than you would have expected, because it's the netting effect of the revenues we're not receiving and the expenditures that we've reduced. So that is where we are with the final budget. This is the homestead farmstead rebate, the calculations. Every homeowner will get a rebate of $273.82 through the assessment exclusion. So understand it's a convoluted system. It isn't like you see the number on your tax bill. You have to look at the calculation. But I'm just showing you the history here. And last year, that number was calculated at $264.75. This year, it has increased by $9.07. Good news for the taxpayer. With this budget, should this budget be approved, we're improving a 2.4% tax increase. That is increasing the bills 2.76 from 115.1 to 117.77. If you will look, just a series of assessed values and what the changes in taxes would be. This is the gross tax. This is the adjustment because the rebate has increased by $9.07. So the net tax increase for people with these parcels are the far right-hand column. Understand that our median assessed value, you always remember me talking about 38,400. It has increased to 38,520. That was just given to us recently in this whole process for the budget this year. So I have increased that from the number so that is the median right there. That's all I have. I wanted to go over, I think you guys are real sick of all my presentations on this, but I will answer any questions you may have.
So Ms. Thomas, please.
Sure. Thank you. So we have had significant conversation about this. Mr. Reinhardt, if you could just answer one question, which you've answered for me several times, but for the sake of tonight's conversation, sitting here today on June 2nd, how much fund balance of the 29 million we have do you believe we will use to pay this year's school bills?
As I've said before, and I'm going to continue to say this same number, but I will tell you I'm very cautious when I say this, and I want you to know that it's not accurate. I got a 220 million on this side and 220 million on this side. Being within $1 million is really good. But I would tell you we would be using with operations, I think $2 million to $3 million. Additionally, if we move money over to the capital reserve, which has been our history to be able to fund capital improvements, and we would move $3 million as we have in the past, that would actually decrease our fund balance by about $5 million.
Okay, so I want to restate it just to make sure I'm on the same page. So we end operations on June 30th. We finish up the books. We look at them sometime in the fall, October, November.
Yes.
At that point, we will be under budget because we intended or we budgeted to use $6.5 million of fund balance. So we will be under budget, but we will have used, at our best guess on today's date, between $2 and $3 million. Let's call it $2 million.
Yes.
So we'd be down to $27 million in the fund balance. We'd at that point have no money or not have any money set aside to look for the summer projects in summer of 17. Summer of 16 projects would have already been done, they're already funded. So at that point in the fall, we will have to make a determination if we're going to take additional money out of fund balance to do some summer projects next summer.
Correct. That's perfect.
Okay. So, as everyone on the board knows, but obviously I consider this one of the most important votes we had, I would like to reiterate publicly for anyone who didn't see finance, my views on this. So I have said all along that I will not vote for a tax increase until we begin to use fund balance. And so this year, we are, by everything that I've seen, every belief I have, we will use between $2 and $3 million of fund balance, reducing it. And so I will be supportive of this because we have reduced staff by 40 people. We have not gotten all the textbooks that the teachers would like. We have not gotten all the supplies. We've cut every budget by 7%. We are doing with less things that impact kids. And if we don't start to increase the taxes, we couldn't fund the deficit without making a significant change in the way we deliver education to the children of this district. We would not have any money in a very few number of years. So I've been on the banter for a long time of, as long as that fund balance is going up, going up, going up, you're not going to see me. But we have had an enormous increase in our expenses through the pension fund, something we all have said 1,000 times, we have no choice but to fund. The taxpayers in that same period of time have had some increase. We haven't always done zero, but we have done zero a couple times. We have to have the tax base match it, or we have to decide that we're going to significantly change the way we deliver education in this district. We're going to put 30 kids in a kindergarten classroom. We're not going to deliver art the way we do now, or music. Those are the kinds of decisions that take $14 million. So as difficult as this is, and as unpopular as I'm sure it's going to be, I will be supporting the 2.4 tax increase because I've seen the cuts. I believe this is necessary, and we're on a path that I believe when the fund balance for me gets in the $15 to $18 million range, to me, on our current budget, who knows 5 years from now, that's a more reasonable range of where I'd like to see the fund balance, and we're on a path to get there. And we won't be able to get the tax base in line with the increases we're seeing in the pension plan. So that's my opinion. If anybody has any questions on it or wants to debate it, I'm sure everyone else has opinions on the vote, but I would be supporting the 2.4% tax increase.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Sure, Dr. Foster.
Okay, good. So there were a number of elements in the cuts that we'd heard about, and I had heard a concern from staff regarding one of them, and I did talk with Dr. Frazier, so I wanted to go over it. So it was about custodial services. So there was a concern that without custodial services during the day, which I think at one point was an idea, that teachers, when kids got sick, what were they going to do in a classroom? So I had heard that out there in the world, and Dr. Frazier had assured me that that wasn't the intent, that the custodial services there will be coverage during the day for those kinds of events. So I think that's taken care of, right?
Yeah, let me just speak to that piece real quickly. That impact certainly would never be on the teacher.
Okay.
It never was going to be. So we've been working, in particular, Mr. Taylor has been working on that model. He's been revising that model with his team within the Facilities and Operations Division. And they've been really doing some solid work around that. So that model has amended a bit in draft form. As it stands right now, the savings has not. It was $468,000. It still is $468,000. But to alleviate some of the more global overall concerns that many of us were feeling during the school day. We're looking at some alternative ways to at service delivery and still be able to provide the needs that we have during the days. But certainly at no point would there ever have been or will there ever be any of those kinds of impacts that are directly on any of our professional staff or support staff otherwise.
Thanks for that. And then I'll just keep going on a few more items regarding the budget and the vote. So I do worry, when you're under stress year after year, which we have been, with rising costs and the difficulty in funding those, things can happen that we don't know about. We don't know all the pieces moving in the district. And so, for example, I had heard this piece of perspective regarding substitute teachers, that we pay less than some surrounding districts. And so, and we're not hiring a lot of staff. So people want to work in Council Rock, and a gateway to doing that is being a substitute. But if it's not leading to anything, there's not that extra bit of motivation. And so when we need a substitute and there's this pool of substitutes, they shop themselves around, is my understanding. So they may say, oh yeah, I'll cover for you tomorrow, but then a neighboring district that pays, $30 more for a day, when they offer them a position, they take it. And so we're left with no sub. And that really can have adverse effects on the educational program. So I don't know whether that kind of thing is just an example of that disparity between us and other districts is an example of things that may be happening due to the constant pressure, the downward pressure on spending. And then I also want to say that, a biology analogy, our bones are constantly remodeling. They're constantly making new bone and destroying bone at the same time. And healthy organizations are constantly innovating and constantly renewing themselves. And some programs, like at MBIT, programs go and new programs come. And for me, my 4 going on 5 years on the school board, that ability to innovate really is rate limited because we're so light on administration. And so you can bring up an idea, and we've all done it, and the administration says, yeah, but I got XYZT. And it's not just this administration, it's the prior as well. So I think we really are limited in our capacity for innovation, and it's because we're so tight on resources and administration is so thin, and it's only gone down since I've been here. I mean, we used to have an assistant business administrator, right? I mean, there's a lot of administrative positions that have gone away.
No, Jim Katazi, he's talking about the purchasing.
Purchasing guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, there's positions that have gone away. And I think that makes it hard for the representative, the elected representative of the community to have a contact point to get meaningful innovation done. So I would really like us to, not worry so much about optics. And if we need more in a certain area, we should be able to add and cut at the same time. That's okay. So I'll go into a few other items as to why I think we should vote for this. So for me, it's the most difficult budget vote I've had to make on the school board, because my opinion is that the sudden changes in taxes and staffing didn't need to happen. The school board had good, even great advice over the prior 4 years from our business administrator about rising reoccurring costs and how to manage those proactively. And in my opinion, we failed to act to cut costs proactively or take a gradual approach to taxation. And in my opinion, we gave more pay and benefits in contracts repeatedly over the years without cuts or raising taxes to cover them. So for me, this vote for this budget is a first step in taking hard decisions, the kind of hard decisions that we need to be making as a school board. So I think we need to vote for this. That's it.
Thanks, Dr. Foster. Violet?
I'll go. I think the hard decision is saying no, honestly. You know, I've sat here in the past, what's this, a third budget? In the past 2 years, and I said, I can't vote for a budget where I'm not proving that it's absolutely necessary. I appreciate all the hard work that the administration's done. I think it's meaningful. I said that before. I think it's significant. I think it's real. But I think that it's our job to draw the line in the sand. And the state draws a line in the sand by saying you can't exceed Act 1, and we limbo under that, right? And we should really give the same direction to the school district. I don't want to see the academic excellence of the school suffer, but I'm confident that this administration can work with what we give them to make sure that Council Rock continues to be a great school. We have, and we certainly should have, the best superintendent that we can, the best business manager that we can. Everyone around this table, we've got a few $1 million worth of expertise in this room, and I think that we can make it work. The taxpayers have been paying more taxes across the board through the federal and the state government. I see it every day in my practice, and I can't, in good conscience, add to that. I see the suffering that folks are doing to try to stay in this districts they've been in for 40 some years. And then I think about, we needed to replace a receptionist last year, and I pulled up the memo, and I think this is public information, right? As far as income, but the wage was $64,000 that we pay a receptionist. The all-in cost was $105,000, not for a teacher, but for a receptionist. I don't want to take the support nature away from that, but I feel like that's a lot. That's more than I pay my receptionist. When we're giving salaries like that, and when we're building schools that, in my opinion, we're not sure whether we need them or not, I've said that a million times, to the tune of $100 million, and then to go and take another 2.4% from the public, it's unacceptable to me. It's I just can't, in good conscience, vote for it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Bilek.
Two quick questions. Dr. Fraser, from the initial proposed budget to today, you were able to reduce about $5 million, is that correct?
Just over, about 5.14, I believe.
5.14, right.
Yes.
And I think that's an important figure to keep in mind. The other point I wanted to ask about was the elimination of 41 positions.
Yes.
How many people does that represent versus vacant positions?
I do not have that total count. Ms. Trioli, I'm looking over at you. I was actually having that conversation with someone today, and I realized at that moment that I didn't have the exact number on me, so I don't.
I realize it's been shifting. That's why
it has been shifting, and so I knew then that I didn't have the exact number.
Right.
And so, Ms. Trioli, I don't know here in the moment whether you do or do not.
Well, I think it's important that we don't use the word people or employees, and that we shift our vocabulary to FTEs or positions, because we've done a ton of work around the reductions so that it does not affect actual employees or people. So I want to clarify that so that when people watch the meeting or the meeting's written about, we're not hearing 40 people, because that's not the case.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm
but I also,
really
but I
happy that
also,
you asked.
I also don't want to lose sight of the human impact as well.
And I'm really, really happy that you asked, because of the amount of work of the administrative team and both of our associations to try not to affect 40 people in this great organization that we're a part of. So on the professional side, all of the reductions that you've seen throughout the budget process have been realized through attrition. So that's a fantastic piece of information and something that we are very, very happy about. When we say that it happened through attrition, it doesn't mean that many people have not had to move locations, have to make changes, and have to make adjustments. So people are impacted, but they're not impacted by a loss of their position. On the support side, there's been a greater impact. The impact on the support side has been largely felt by our clerical assistants. They are the people that you see when you go into schools, the first people that greet you at our IPCs or at our front office. There have been furloughs there. The number is at 4 at the moment. We were able to keep as many people on board as we can through attrition.
Other individuals have been reassigned and will work at multiple schools next year. Receiving that information is hard for people who have been at one school for a great number of years. It has been a difficult few weeks for many members of our support staff. Our instructional assistants were another group that was affected. We had a reduction of 15 FTEs in that area. We are realizing those through attrition, and that number every day is coming down. I'm really hopeful that on the instructional assistant side, we will not have any job loss. But again, people will be moving locations, changing programs. So where there's not job loss, there's still a big human impact. There is some job loss for our hall monitors at the high school. There are 4 individuals who are impacted by that. So while it's not 40, it's a lot of our organization that is really feeling the difficulty of this budget. Been a lot of tears over the last few weeks.
I would say too, there are varying levels of job loss in the sense, as we talk about the human impact, would I say that, you know, I don't want to say an individual name, but that somebody who has been working in the district as a STEM specialist, who is going to an entirely different position, that's not what we brought the person on for. And so that's a job loss.
So that's
it is
what
not
I
an
was-
employment loss.
That's exactly what I was referring to on the professional side. So people are going to new assignments, new schools. So while they're not being furloughed or losing their
Right.
job, like the STEM specialist, there are many teachers who will be doing all new things next year in new places.
And I'll add to that we have that same dynamic with the support staff in some cases where we have support staff members who are going from one location to another location, sometimes within the same job and sometimes into a new job. And that has a real impact, obviously, on that person, but it also has an impact on that school community that they're leaving. Because you have relationships there, and those relationships have been formed over years and years. So this is a tough budget for this school community. I don't want anyone to have any mistaking on that piece. This is about human relations. It's about relationships, and the consequences of making these decisions are extremely difficult. And Christine mentioned it. The tears, the very difficult moments, especially over the past 2-3 weeks, with having meetings, making announcements, and the partnerships that she has enjoyed, that we have enjoyed with both of our associations, with Bill Gerhauser, who's in our audience here this evening as president, with Chuck Rem from the CRESPA Association, and other folks from both of those groups have really just done a fabulous job of standing side by side with Christine in delivering these messages, and it's been very difficult on them as well. So it's been tough. It's been tough on us as a school community, and we will ultimately get through it. But I want people to understand this, that to your original question, Mr. Tate, how much money? $5.14 million. Where do you get that? Whenever we had significant reductions as a school district in 2011, we don't have low-hanging fruit in this school district. If we do, there isn't much. Anybody can go to any school district or any business anywhere and find an exception here or there, but you are not going to find much at all in this school district. So when you make reductions to the tune of $5.14 million, you are cutting where it hurts, and it's hurting. It's hurting this school district right now. That's a part of the story of this budget season right now. So,
Mr. Tatum, I'll let you finish up.
Thank you. Yeah, real quickly, I think CRESPA, the Teachers Association, the cabinet, the principals, Dr. Fraser, Mr. Reinhardt, everybody who was involved in working, making extra efforts and working really hard toward those $5.2 million in cuts deserve a lot of credit for that effort. Because I like to think that going into the process, we were presented with a conservative budget proposal, and to cut more than $5 million out of that and 40 positions was a great effort on their part. I'm convinced that we absolutely need this tax increase because we've talked about this, but there's always a chance that there's somebody new to this conversation and discussion. Our retirement costs went over the past 5 years from $9.2 million to $28 million. That's astronomical. That tripled. Our healthcare costs increased at the same time. That was an increase of about $19 million. At the same time, our healthcare costs increased by $2.2 million. Those are huge increases. And when you look at our history of recent tax increases, this board has been very conservative in its taxation. The increases over the past 5 years, there was a year with no increases. That was 5 years ago. It was a 0% increase in the real estate tax. The following year was 1.7. Next year was 1.3. Then 0.6. And then last year, the real estate tax increase was 0.25%. So the board has done a good job of holding the line on real estate tax increases over the past 5 years. Over the past 20 years, there were 5 years with no increase in the real estate tax. And one could argue that we were living on borrowed time, that, you know, it's now time to address the needs for a tax increase to cover the cost of this district. The thing that worries me is looking forward, I'm seeing, you know, and Mr. Reinhardt has done a great job of presenting to us what the next 5 years look like. And it's not going to be any easier over any of the next 5 years. And the $5.2 million that was cut this year, that's not $5.2 million we can cut next year. So I see difficult challenges ahead. But I'm convinced that we need this tax increase, unfortunately. And it's just absolutely necessary to preserve the quality of the academic programs of this district and to continue the positive momentum. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Dr. Thorwald.
Mr. Reinhardt, I saw 18 on your retirement list today,
Yes.
and I just celebrated 38 retirements. What does that do to our budget?
When we look at retirements, you've looked at CRESPA members, you've also looked at administrators, and you've looked at CREA members. In the CREA membership there were 19 retirements, and that's where we get our big savings from. The other savings, we don't get as great a savings, so it isn't as big a number. So the 19 retirements really equates to the 18 I have there. There was one person that was never in this year's budget because they announced it early enough that we never had it in this year's budget. So the numbers that we have up there are the most current I have for savings.
I wrestle with this because we're clearly we need a tax increase, but we've put the accelerator to the floor, and your projections show we're not going to let up in the next 5 years. We're going to hold it to the floor and run it all the way out. So to Wendy, to your point, I think we need to fundamentally change the way we deliver a quality education. I don't think there's any escaping that. And from a taxpayer standpoint, I'd like to ease into that, not stomp on the tax pedal in one fell swoop. So I can't vote for 2.4. I can vote for a smaller number because we sincerely need it and we need to buy this administration time to work with it. But the bottom line is we need to fundamentally change the way we deliver education because we can't afford to keep working this way. And I think we can do it in a quality way. So.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work put in this budget, and I appreciate that. Many years ago, I sat on this board, the predecessor to the predecessor for our superintendent, made what I thought was one of the most asinine decisions that a superintendent could make. At that time, the fellow said, I'll have the guy who's running HR run special ed too, because that'll work. Let me tell you, it didn't work. What happened was we had a screwed up HR department and we had a special education department which took many years to rebuild and get back to a spot that works well, and I attribute a lot of that to Chuck's presence. Special ed is a place where this district spends about 20% of its budget. Special ed is a place in this district where if you don't count the gifted IEPs, and there are many, we're blessed, there are 1,600 IEPs for children with special needs and disabilities. So we have elected this year to reduce the number of special ed supervisors from 6 to next year to 5 to save approximately $158,000. I don't think it's as bad as the predecessor to the predecessor, but I don't think it's smart. And I look at it this way. That's going to change the average workload for those people from 267 special education students per special ed supervisor to 320 per special education supervisor. We are increasing the workload on those individuals by 20%, 19.8%. This is an area of incredible risk to this district and incredible risk to the students. And we're going to do that at the same time that we have come out and said we're going to change or reduce a number of special education aides and rethink some of the way we're doing special education because we're changing the aides, we're changing the ratio of people working with the kids. So to me, I listened to Wendy, I listened to Mike, and they said, we have to think about new ways of doing it. And what we do at the same time is we make some changes in our staffing that has some potential consequences to those special kids who get special education. And we increase the workload on the people who are overseeing that to create a situation, in my opinion, that opens us up to litigation that well exceeds the $158,000 we think we're going to save. So, and I have argued against, and I will be honest with you, I have argued against people who sit on this board and say, I'm not going to vote for it because of a single issue. But this isn't a single issue. This is a thematic issue. This is an issue that says, and I understand, I want to be really clear. We went to the administration and we said to the administration, we need you to do cuts. And we have guys who are team players and are going to make things work. And they work hard to make things work. They really do. Robert came in, you know, this is, you know, you're walking in a quagmire when you start doing this, and that's what he walked into. Chuck, team player, Chuck Lambert, Dr. Lambert, sorry, I'm first name this. You know, he's a team player too. He'll go for it and he'll get his people to work for it. But I think it creates a risk and a liability that I'm not willing to accept, and I don't want to put my name on it. Okay? So I'm not going to do it. I have looked and I have asked for, it's not easy numbers I asked for, and they were hard to come by, and I don't blame the administration. The numbers I'm looking for, I was trying to find a way to save $158,000 by doing something else. One of my notions goes actually to a question I think Dr. Foster raised. One of the questions which we came to was, you know, about maintenance staff and what do we do in an error mark? And my notion was, you know, sometimes you have to spend money to save money because we spend a great deal of money, and I apologize, I asked for it. Trust me, Robert, Bob, everybody was busy working on numbers. This was not the most important number in the world. I wanted to know what we spend on overtime for our maintenance guys, because my theory was, I think I'm paying overtime where I could actually hire someone additional, hire another additional, pay straight time and save money. Could I save 158? They had a lot of things going on. I don't blame them, but that's the number I was looking. I was looking for a way to do it. I look at the number now, the retirement, sorry, reading the wrong note at the wrong time. Reading the gross retirement number, it's better than we thought it was. It's pretty damn close to $158,000. We're doing better than we thought we were. For me, this is a live or die issue on this one. You know, a go for it or don't go for it. I think you make an error with a kid with a special need, you don't get it back. The savings we save with $158,000, inconsequential to the damage we have a potential to do. Increasing the workload on people who are already working. I looked at Chuck for a second because I wanted some numbers, and I apologize, you know, for doing it last minute. And I said to Chuck, so how many IEPs? How many meetings? He goes, meetings? 3 meetings? Some of the IEPs are 3 meetings. Some of them are 6 meetings. Some of them are 8 meetings, including the attorney and including counsel at these meetings. These are not trivial items. And to say to people, yeah, work 20% harder. I can do this for you. We've already got them working harder than they should be on this case. And you know how we know that? Because we see few issues, because these people are beating themselves to death doing it. And you know what happens? We lose people to other places. So what I've got here is a situation where I'm going to beat them to death. I'm going to boost them up 20% in their workload. And then a year from now, I'm going to be looking to replace 2 or 3. And I don't want to go there. I think it puts this district at risk. And so for that reason, the 2.4%, you know what? Necessary evil. You know, Dr. Frazier said about something about we don't have low-hanging fruit. In this case, we kind of cut beyond the fruit and we took the branch. And I think we damaged the tree. A few other points to make. Ed, thank you for making the comment about retirement. I need to make this comment because we get the notes every year around this time. Actually, we've got them already, but I'll say it anyhow. The increase in the retirements is not our doing. We can't opt in or out of a retirement plan. That is a state mandated retirement plan. It comes to us, fait accompli, we're on the hook for it. You know, it's a difficult budget. I appreciate that. I am thrilled that we, you know, have a mechanism to get into the fund balance. I'll make, under new business, I'll have some other further discussion about that tonight. But I can't in good conscience agree to this budget, not because of the number, but because of that one cut, which I think is just it's just the string that you pull out and you lose the dominoes. And for that reason, I'm going to vote no on this budget tonight. Ms. Brooks?
Chuck, can you speak to this? I mean, because I got to tell you, this whole budget thing I'm struggling with. But there was one, I mean, I, as a board member, can't possibly know the details of all of these cuts, I mean, I know what they mean, but then there's also a degree of trust in that if you're recommending the cut, I mean, to hear what Jerry said, it's very unnerving. And I'm sure you didn't make that suggestion lightly, but it is creating a tension for me because I'm not quite sure how to process what the implication of that is. So can you?
You got to put him in a spot.
Well,
I apologize because I know I cannot be articulate. Have I lost a lot of hours of sleep over this? Yes. Have I taken responsibilities and divvied them up amongst myself and the other supervisors that's going to add to our workloads? Yes. Is it something that I believe is going to put this district in significant liability? No, where I would not have ever recommended it. So it's a very difficult question to answer because you ask, can you do something? Yes, I can. Is it the best way to do it? No, it's not. We were given a mission to cut and then cut more, and that's what I did. And I very much appreciate the comments and the concern, and I apologize if I'm out of line for saying this. If you're going to tell me I have $150,000, I'm not going to put it with a special ed supervisor. I'm going to bring back some of the other staff. And I apologize if I shouldn't say that, but that's how I feel.
You don't need to apologize.
Thank you, Dr. Lambert. No, it's a professional opinion. I respect it.
I appreciate the concern about the litigation. I mean, and unfortunately, that's what we spend a lot of time upstairs dealing with, preventing that. I'm not concerned that we're going to get into a position where we can't manage things to the point that chaos is going to take over. I'm not concerned. We have quality people. I am not concerned that I have kids whose needs are not going to be met. I know that will not happen. Is it a hardship? It's a hardship, just like everything else that we're doing tonight is a hardship.
can I pose a hypothetical? So let's, these cuts happen, and what happens in November, December, where we recognize that some of these cuts, we see consequences to which we think are actually much greater than we expected. What is our ability to address it at that point?
I think we'd have to adjust and reevaluate our priorities within the budget. If at that point we would have to expend money that is actually not budgeted, I do believe that we would be able to do that as long as there's resources available, meaning funding that's available to have to make certain adjustments to the budget. I warn you about that because as we do those type of things, it's going to, it's kicking the can down the road again because next year we're going to come up with the same issues and have to deal with that. So that isn't something that I want to say lightly or anything like that. But I would tell you that if there is something that was enough that would need us reprioritize, I believe we'd be able to do that. It would not put us in a strong financial position, but I believe we'd be able to do something like that.
But,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry,
floor,
please.
floor is Ms. Brooks.
I mean, did you have something about that?
Yes, just to say, but if we added that money today, we'd have to take it out of fund balance because the
Yes.
vote we're taking
Right,
today is the
exactly.
max
Right.
tax
No, I
increase,
understand
so.
that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right,
We
so
would have to-
it's no different today or down the road.
Right,
It's all gonna come from the same place.
yes,
That was the
correct.
only thing I
Right,
wanted
so
to be clear
but I
about.
just wanted to clarify that if we discovered something significant, it could be addressed. It's not in an
Yes.
easy way and the financials are challenging.
Yes,
And I just want to make sure, Chuck, I heard you right. So, I mean, you said that in the spirit of this, if you had that money, your first priority probably wouldn't be at the director. Is that what you said?
I absolutely said my priority would not be at that level. My level would be at the support staff or teacher level.
You know, Jerry highlighted something that obviously resonates for him, and but the reality is that the passion and the pain and the issues of these cuts. Take your pick your department, pick your administrator, pick your staff person. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's very, very painful. And the bottom line is to not give the tax increase makes that pain worse. The only way to lessen the tax increase or have no tax increase would be to make even more cuts, right? And so I understand that when we talk about it, because like you talk about, you need to balance your budget, these are your expenses, this is your revenue. But the variables in a school budget include things beyond our control. The pension, the increased costs in healthcare, unfunded mandates that come with just educating our students. You know, in my house, people can't just, when I'm running the budget for my own home, it's not like random people are coming in and saying, spend this, do that. I mean, I have the control. I know what my income is. I know the expenses I want. I make the priorities. And it's not as simple in the school district because there are all these other things pounding in and wanting more.
I would tell you that there are all kinds of uncertainties with the school district and our budget, and uncertainties are growing every day, everything from the state budget to what's happening in the local economy, while there are more and more constraints put on us. Act 1 index, you will look at, like in past years, didn't raise taxes. In 1 year, we raised taxes 12%, the next year 8%. The Act 1 index puts a constraint on us that makes it even more important that we manage our finances conservatively so we don't get in a situation, because in a year that we need a huge tax increase, we can go up to the index, and if we don't get a referendum pass, our only choice is to cut programs.
To that point, and bravo, congratulations, much gratitude for the 5-year projections, all that. But the reality is the Act 1 index doesn't get set, and we don't know that. We can make guesses. It's not going to be wildly fluctuated, but I mean, as we see with this budget, even 0.1%, it has such a huge and significant impact on how we choose to appropriate things. I know that all our constituents have expectations of us to be good stewards of this and and to managing the sensitivities that we have to what it means to ask our community to pay more to fund our schools is tremendous. But there are also expectations in our community to have a level of education and a program and things in our schools that help continue to make our students better, more prepared for the world, more competitive. And so I struggle because as difficult as these things are, I could rattle off all the things that I would like to see invested. I want more money towards technology. I want more STEM specialists and tech aides. I want more math specialists. I wish we could, I hope we can still implement a modified full-day kindergarten. We can't get there if we don't make an investment through our taxes to help build the foundation of our money. And so I have struggled with this, and you know, and I've been where Mike is. Does it really have to be 2.4? Couldn't we lower it? But the bottom line is, the only way to get to that lower number is to cut even more. And I've been through enough meetings and enough conversations. I don't see where we could possibly do it. As it is, we are having a difficult time, you know, stomaching what we've proposed. And so it is not a comfortable thing. And I think it is hard to vote yes or no for this. Just committing to how we are going to move this district forward is a difficult thing. But in balancing everything and in appreciation of everything that everybody said, I will support this this increase, but it is with cautious feelings about what this means, because even with bringing in the most revenue we can, it's a challenge to know all that's being cut and how much it's delaying the things that I think we need to be doing for our kids to maintain the level of education that we want. So
I hope there's good news as we go forward financially and things look better than what they look today. And if that happens and our economy keeps going, we've seen our economy grow since I've been here, EIT and everything else. We'd be in a much worse position if it was still 2008.
Ms. McKessie?
I guess it's probably a question for Cabinet, but more importantly, Dr. Frazier, I want to feel good that these folks will come to you, citing the example of what happens, but it's not just Chuck's department. It's everybody is taking a hit. There is pain and suffering across the board. To Denise's point, I'm not going to vote in favor of this tax increase lightly. And we all still sat and looked at the cuts, and we all felt an equal amount of sickness. And so I just want to feel good that you folks will, I'm not suggesting you need to come back to us. It's got to come back up to Dr. Frazier to say, we are, you know, unintended consequences. We thought we weren't going to harm kids. This is harming kids. Or this is, and long before we get to the point that the bottom falls out. We won't know what we can do until we're faced with it, but I need to feel good that you all are comfortable to do that, that we're not just at the end of the line here, and you absolutely live, particularly when there are negative impacts to kids.
I'll speak to that briefly. Our reason for being is kids. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. That's why this place exists. That's why our roles exist. There will be an impact. We've never said that there won't be an impact.
Of course.
We identified areas very strategically, very intentionally, where we tried and we anticipate where we could mitigate that impact. And I don't want to mince words there because there's still an impact, but we're trying to minimize and mitigate that impact And special education is a tough conversation there, because we have very, very significant reductions there, far beyond just the supervisor of special education, but we have significant reductions at the teacher level and at the support staff level there. But precisely where they're coming from are, again, strategic and very intentional, whereas other spots at the teacher and support staff level would be even more impactful to students. So yeah, we will be very mindful, not just as a cabinet, but as a full administrative team, and we will be asking teachers for feedback. And rest assured, if that impact goes beyond the threshold that we're comfortable with, we'll be knocking on your doors, and we'll be doing it quickly, because again, they are our reason for being. It's why we exist. It's why we all do what we do. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. McKessie? Appreciate the views of the Jerry.
Just one minor point. It's not arguing one or the other. I want to point out it's a defect when you show slides. Mr. Reiner prepared a slide today, I'm very glad he did, that showed the impact on each of the different prices of homes and what the incremental tax increase would be. Lost in that is sometimes that simple 4th or 5th grade statistics class of the mean, the mode, and the median. And I got bothered with that to say, well, 5th grade, okay, mode. I don't know, it's early, I thought, but, and my point here is the median house assessment in Council Rock is $38,520 or?
Yep.
Okay. So when he showed the numbers, that means half of the homes in Council Rock will have a tax increase, net increase year over year of $106 or less. Because when you look at the numbers, it does look impressive when you get down to the $100,000, $200,000 home. That means half of the homes in this community will have a tax increase under this budget of $106 or
Well,
less.
that affect 97 after the homestead.
Okay, I don't remember. I don't remember which number, which column I was looking at. But I just want to bring that up because when you look at that number and you get down, and most people jump down, that's the assessed value. That is not the market value of your house. People look at that and say, $100,000. Well, my house is worth $300,000. Oh my God! But your assessment on a house that may be worth $600,000, maybe 1/10 or 1/20 of that, 1/10 or 1/5 of that. So I just want to take a moment for
Can you confirm
clarification.
that slide? Because I actually wrote that down. I was going to ask you. Thank you for bringing it up, Jerry. Because we often say average assessed home. So did you mean you purposely?
No, it's the median. It's the
Okay.
median. It's exactly
Okay.
the median homestead. So it's anyone that's subject to the homestead, that's the median, which is, if you have 200 of them,
I got it.
it's the,
Well, that's the difference.
Yeah.
The moment of science and math was the mode was the most common or frequent, most common occurring. The mean was the add them all together, divide by the number. And the median is 50% or lower and 50% or higher.
What is the mean? Do you know?
I haven't looked at the mean. I could do that another time.
That's fine.
Is there any other comment? So I'll take the opportunity to share my thoughts. This year's process has been the most detailed, transparent that I've seen in my 4 years. And when I say transparent, what I mean is the level of detail that has been shared, the 5-year plan, the level of rigor that has gone into this. We've incorporated lots of things that members of this board have asked for, and my hat really goes off to Dr. Frazier's first time around, to Wendy chairing the finance committee, but to Bob and the incredible work that he's done with the entire team. This has been the toughest year that I've seen. I would agree with Mark that no is the tough decision, and that's why I will be voting with Mark. I appreciate the position of my peers, and I agree that the time that we need to raise taxes, to Mike's point, is coming. I unfortunately believe it could be an if, not a when. But as I look back over time and our track record of net positive deliveries to the budget and the increases to the fund balance, understanding that it's great that we're using some this year, and understanding that we typically use that for capital projects, and as I look forward, understanding that we've got efficiencies to be found as we redistrict. We heard about significant savings we could find today just with rerouting and the efficiencies of school consolidation going forward. I am in a position today where I can't support this budget. I want to see the investments, as everybody says, before I can take that position to raise taxes. So that's my position. If I could have a roll call vote, please.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grubb?
No.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
No.
Mr. Block?
No.
Mr. Bialik?
No.
And Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-4. Congratulations, gentlemen, you have a budget. Mr. Byler, can you please read number 8?
Yes. I move to approve the establishment of committed fund balances for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2016, as contained in the attachment to this agenda, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKessie. Any questions for Mr. Reinhardt, or you just want to remind us quickly what this is?
Yeah, this is just a mundane motion that's required under general accepted accounting principles, that we have to declare what committed fund balances before the year end is. So it's really just something that I have to be able to show the auditors that you guys have declared what committed fund balances could be available to you at the end of the year.
And just to be very clear, that the phrasing of this is always awkward. This is the fund balance categories. This is not, we're not assigning the numbers to it.
Correct.
Any other questions? We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Grubb?
Yes.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Bialik?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
That would be a 9-0 pass. And we'll move on to board items. Is there any old business? Thumbs up.
Yep, old business.
Come on.
No problem. I'm going to pass out to you. This is an item which was prepared by Mr. Taylor June 1st of 2015 regarding the 21st of May 2015 board meeting discussing Newtown Middle School, Holland Middle School track considerations and construction. We heard people come to the mic today and they have 175 signatures. The petition doesn't speak to the fact that to do this project at this time would cost well in excess of $1 million. It would also add delay to the existing projects which are now bid and underway, and potentially open the district up to a revised land planning, as well as potential delay claims from contractors. So when someone says that even this estimate was prepared by Chuck last year, which spoke of a cinder track costing approximately $630.
You said Chuck.
Good work, Chuck. Good look, Chuck. Special ed and this. I thought the thing last year was asking. A couple of years ago.
We're really consolidating.
No, sorry, Doug. No, it isn't. It's Doug's.
Wow. Time to go. Get late.
You're going to make me jump back in here?
All right.
Let's go.
So this was prepared. A track in cinder was estimated at $638,000, and at that time, as part of the construction project, the track was considered to be $1,151,000. Contrary to what was said to the at a previous board meeting by a member of the public, these slides, Doug, I believe these slides were actually available at a facilities meeting around about the same time or the next meeting, and shows a placement or a projected potential placement of a track on each of the sites. So this had come before the board. I would have to review the minutes. I don't even know if it was detailed in the minutes of the subsequent facilities meeting where we asked it, we talked about it, and we resolved not to do it. Last time we were accused, by the way, of not putting, not telling the world we weren't going to have a track. I want to be very clear. We're also not going to have a greenhouse. We're also not going to have a planetarium. We're also not going to have a nuclear reactor. I really can't think of what other things I can mention at this point. No nuclear reactor. Penn State had one. So I'm looking at this, and there's a question about, will this come back to facilities again? From my perspective, this has been asked and answered, And to bring it back to facilities again now would severely, to the detriment of the projects going forward, and again, increasing the cost and delaying the construction of the schools, be a problem. So from my perspective, unless at least 4 people here say, yeah, they want to talk about facilities, I would not be listing this again as a topic of facilities.
My recollection is that we have not spoken about this in a meeting. Perhaps I missed the meeting. I'd like to see the minutes on that. My recollection is that this information was only provided to us by email. So I could be wrong, but I have no specific recollection of this being discussed at a facilities meeting. For that matter, I don't have a recollection of having missed a facilities meeting in that time, but maybe I did.
So you would want to discuss the facilities?
I would not be opposed to having a conversation about it because I don't believe we ever have. And I also, I mean, and just if we were to have that conversation, I'd like to understand, does this have to happen at the time of construction? I certainly would not want to delay the projects, but since it is outside, because fields are being, certainly at Newtown Middle, being developed after the building opens, I mean, I have questions about it. I'm not saying I 100% support this, but I do think it is worthy of a conversation because it's been raised in the community and because I do not believe that we have ever had a public conversation about it.
I would not. If they want to talk about rearranging with the money they have now, but we just shifted people around and changed lives of 40 people. We didn't even get presented to this board the 6th grade English books because we can't afford to buy them. So I don't care whether they build baseball, soccer, whatever, but the allotment for the money for the fields is all I'm doing. And if delay is going to cost more, I am not spending another dime on facilities, not another dime,
So that would be
until
a
we
no.
put money in the education,
So
in the
would that be-
classroom.
So that would be a no to speaking about, you're not interested in entertaining this again?
I don't want to entertain even facilities meetings until we spend some time on academics. So how's that?
So could you
That'll free up some nights.
speak, I mean,
That's why she's not the
you might as well
facilities
leave now.
chair.
Do I see Kyle, do you have a comment?
Well, I wanted to give Doug an opportunity to at least speak to what Denise just referenced in terms of what would the delays be involved, what's possible, what's not possible.
Well, the questions are not simple to answer in that way, but what I can say generally, first, I do believe that we had a brief discussion, but this was generally addressed through an email to the board, as you recall. So I don't think we had a formal meeting about tracks, but that being said, I know that we removed tracks from the project in the very early design phase when we had tennis courts shown, tracks shown, and then they were removed from the project, and that was publicly discussed many, many, many months ago.
I don't disagree.
In regards to the scope, at Newtown Middle School, there really is only one. We started at a kind of 1,000-foot level saying, hey, can we potentially do this or not? And then there's been some more questions generated. I went back to the civil engineer. I've had some discussions with the design team. And at a 500-foot level, Newtown has one potential home for the track. And it's tucked in the corner where the new baseball field and a couple other fields are proposed, adjacent to Tyler State Park. By putting it there, you're going to compromise the left field of the baseball field, the actual distance from home plate to the outfield fence, and the 2 athletic fields that would, running north to south, would run into the track, if you will. So we're going to compromise a couple fields to put it there. We still have to get past some variances for setbacks and things like that. The fields that we have shown now do exceed the setback lines, but it's grass and it's paint. So it's not a physical feature like a track where we're actually putting impervious surface beyond setback lines. The process, regardless of whether it's Holland or Newtown, is likely about an 8-month process. It's a land development process all over again. So we will go back to the townships, will go to the conservation district. There'll be easements, variances, there'll be things that we have to seek in any case. Newtown is going to be harder to accomplish than Holland. Newtown should happen during construction because it will affect stormwater, where we're proposing some of the new design, how that all works. Delays, the risk of delays are greater if we take this project and put it out for public bid, bring in another contractor to perform this work at the same time we have our contractors currently under contract performing work on the same site. Because there's interference claims, there's things that can happen when two separate contractors working on different projects start to get in each other's way. If they're addressed as change orders through the existing contractors, then certainly those delays aren't as great, but the risk of getting higher prices certainly is, we're at a disadvantage in that regard. Holland Middle School's field could be more easily placed. This original sketch showed it along the side. It can actually run east to west on the site, kind of below a field that we're proposing. Could happen even at a later date because that one is kind of out of the way of construction. Certainly lends itself more to a track-friendly site than Newtown does. Would require some reconfiguration of the baseball field, shifting the baseball field, which adds some price to it. In any case, both of these projects, as Jerry said, are in excess of $1.1, $1.2 million looking at it right now. Now, that can change as you move forward and visit the township and talk about, what other things we have to do to make these work. So I don't know if that kind of helps or not.
No, it does. I mean, as I said, that we have not had the benefit of an exchange of conversation. I mean, yes, we talked, sort of peripherally about tracks, but relative to this document, which had significant information and the impact of it, this was never presented publicly and we never talked about it. So, thank you for the information.
Sure. Doug, I have a question for you. So would there be any delay or added cost to have a discussion about this in the facilities meeting or as an agenda item at a board meeting?
Your first question, would there be delays?
Would there be any delay in the projects or added cost in having a discussion at a facilities meeting or at a board meeting?
No, there'd be no delays in putting this on an agenda.
My opinion is this. I don't think you're going to get 5 members of this board to agree to install a track at either school. But at least some members of the public want to have this discussion. And they deserve to have the discussion at a publicly advertised meeting. I agree that I feel like we've had this discussion. I do think it was cursory. I think the remainder of it happened in this email. I hate to hear that someone has to ask for a right to know request when I think that we've already requested that this be put out on the website. So I would absolutely encourage the board to have let's have a public meeting, let's advertise it. I don't think we're going to have 150 people there. I think people very easily sign a petition. Maybe we have 10% of those folks here, but we ought to hear from them. Maybe there's something we don't know. I don't think they're going to get a track, but they deserve to hear us and we hear them.
So, I think Mr. Taylor described the difference between that document and the current reality, right? The sites have been developed. There's been layouts. And so Mr. Taylor followed up that document with another one that gave some ideas about where you would put a track out. And I think that's maybe what Mrs. Carroll is referring to. Maybe that one didn't go out to the public. But so for me, this old document is an old document and has nothing to do with the decisions that we made, the civil engineering that we've discovered, the setbacks, the agreements and all that. And so it would be a total new revisitation of the sites as we've decided to use them. And for me, I mean, I'm just doing my job. I've had people come to me, ask for a track. So this is called democracy. So I carried it into the board and said, hey, I've got people saying that this is a no-cut sport. It's the most popular sport. I had no idea. And I did know that there's all this concussion. There's this concern about people being not as active later in life as they should be. And you know, athletics is academics, right? We have physical education instructors. We have coaches. How healthy a child is physically impacts how they do academically. So this is a total academic spend question. And furthermore, it's a capital spend question. We repair roofs all the time. We have summer projects all the time. We renovate buildings. That's capital. It has nothing to do with this budget. So the question is it worth spending capital money on an academic project that will benefit kids? And I have people that I represent that say, yeah, it's worth it. But what they don't know is that they may have to make some sacrifices. Certain parts of that Newtown site, you would need the track to be a non-standard size. I'd love to hear how they feel about that sacrifice. Maybe it's a deal breaker for them. Other parts of that site, you're going to start blowing out some of the dimensions of the baseball fields and make them smaller. Well, how does the community feel about that? There's some choices and trade-offs. Would we be okay having a track at just one of the middle schools? And I'm open to it. I've said that before. The great thing about talking to the public would be, I am still surprised. I didn't understand the incredible limitations in using the track at North with the interference with other sports. I mean, it's obvious you can't be, doing shot put or high jump or pole vaulting when football's there, or lacrosse. I mean, that's kind of clear, but you also can't run around the track either. So, I think we should have more capacity in our athletic system than we do. I love the idea of a lifelong sport. I'd love to hear from the community. It doesn't have to be at a facilities meeting. It could be at a board meeting. I'd love to hear Mr. Taylor or the civil engineer describe what the options are. And I'd like us to think of this as a capital project that has nothing to do with operating budget. And it's a capital project about academics. So I'd love to have a discussion. I think it'd be great.
We have a high school, I guess, down where I represent people, but I represent the whole community that doesn't have a stadium, doesn't have a pool. And those are capital expenses that would achieve parity between the two schools. And so I'm a complete no on these tracks until we fix that. So we need to work on that.
If you want to have that discussion, because I've run a pool for forever.
Well, for me, I'm not, my problem, let me be clear. My problem is, given where we are in the project, the track is not the priority. My priority is to get the schools completed on time, on or under budget, and to move ahead with the program of what the district is doing. Truthfully, if you want to think outside the box, we may still own Richboro Middle School. It's a big piece of property, makes a great place for a track, for public use and school use, and both middle schools could share it. But you know what? I want to get the buildings done. We have a plan. We've got approvals on the plans largely to move forward as they're done, as they're organized. We've got a budget. Yeah, we're under budget, but you know what? It only takes a little hiccup during the construction to start going into things. I'd rather not, just because I have the money. I don't even have the money. Just because it didn't cost as much as I thought it would. So I'm not, to the people who signed the petition, I'm not opposed to tracks. I'm just opposed to tracks right now in the midst of construction. If there's a way to fit them in afterward, do something else, God bless. But right now, to interfere with an ongoing project, I can't accept it as a responsibility.
I just want to ask, so do people want me, I can scan this and email it? I don't know whether you want to know whether your constituents.
I think we should all see it, yeah. So they gave it to us, so it would have been good to get full copies.
So it's okay if I scan it and I'll just email it around?
Or the administration, Marie will scan it tomorrow and distribute it through email.
Do you guys want to scan it?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take a copy and we'll have that scanned in
Yeah, thanks.
and emailed out to the board. I do want to make one comment in terms of what was or was not posted to the website. And I'm just going to be very frank here. I'm not sure why or how we would have posted those old schematics or documents. It has not been over the past month or 2 months a formal topic of discussion of the boards. So how or what the headline is or what the context is on our website is not something that frankly makes a whole lot of sense to me. So I come to the district, I've come to the district and have operated for the first 11 months with full transparency. So I do not want there to be anyone watching at home or participating in this process otherwise who thinks that we've attempted to do anything to the contrary, because that would absolutely not be the case. There simply would have been no appropriate context to provide for any such web posting. So we do have these documents. I am certainly not opposed to any conversation personally at facilities committee, presuming that we have a facilities committee meeting coming up. And I think that in fact would be appropriate to do so. But until that happens and until there's actual consideration by the board, premature it would have been for us to post this on the website. Is my opinion. So that's why nothing was posted up until this point. So to our resident who has requested this information, I will be more than happy, with or without a right to know request, to provide that information to that resident. Thank you.
Robert, in your defense, every plan, every schematic, every approval process of this is posted. So there weren't tracks on them. So it to me, it's obvious there weren't tracks on them. So there are tennis courts they're just not on there. So you shouldn't have to apologize for hiding anything because you didn't hide anything. So.
Any other comment?
So where are we? Are we not having discussion with the public about this? That's what I'm feeling. Whose decision is it? Is it Jerry's as the chair of
If it's facilities, if it's a facilities meeting, it would be as the chair of the facilities would probably fall to me.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I can't believe
so
it.
let me just say this, Mark, as the board president, if there's an agenda item that somebody's interested in discussing at a board agenda, that can be circulated to Robert and I to do. As a facilities chair committee, Jerry's, going to work with Doug to work that agenda. So, if there's a group that's interested in putting that on the agenda as a discussion topic, we can do that. I mean, for me personally, I'd love to see tracks. I would, but to me, it's kind of like the full day kindergarten discussion. I can't. I'd love to have it, but we got to live within.
But we had that discussion. You're interrupting me, so I'm going to interrupt you. But we had that discussion. We had that discussion about full day kindergarten. All I'm saying is
that's my point. So we can have that discussion. I'm saying it's fine.
But we're getting shut down, right? So the impression
I just told you we can do it at a board meeting if you guys want to put it on the agenda. That's why I.
So I'd like to see it on the next agenda for comment and advertise to the public.
I think we should discuss if are you saying you would not be willing to put it?
I came here to see if there were at least 4 people who wanted to have it to discuss it at facilities. Because what also happens is facilities isn't an all-attend meeting. So if you have it at facilities and it's not an all-attend meeting, then someone will say, but then we have to talk about it here. So
we might have to talk about it in both places, but it seems to me that facilities, in my opinion, seems like the most logical first place to start.
Then we'll put it, but so we won't see Wendy there. But
anybody can make whatever choices they want to make.
Fine.
I think there are 2 points on the table. One is it seems crazy to go around this room to discuss who would be willing to vote for a track because several folks are just talking about who's willing to have the conversation.
Yep.
So let's figure out the best place to have the conversation. It's clear we're going to have the conversation. I think facilities is the most logical place to begin. But whatever.
We'll list it at a facilities meeting.
All right. Any other old business? Any new business?
You hit me yet? New business.
New business?
Yeah. Congratulations, Bob, we have a budget. Now the cycle begins all over again. One of the things we've talked about, and Wendy, your commentary during the budget was interesting because you see that we're now on a path that will slide the budget reserve over time down to a level that you think is acceptable. Bob and I have had conversations in the past, I don't know, maybe other board members have had that conversation as well, which is we're always faced with a conundrum of using the budget, using budgetary reserve and doing things with it that are using one-time money for repeating expenses. And it's really a bad plan. One of the things we've talked about, and Wendy, I know you and I have talked about it, was using one-time money to do something that has a continuous revenue stream associated with it, or a cost avoidance stream about it. And so what I'd like to talk about or bring forward to the board, or suggest that we talk about it in a future date, is to have Bob put together some alternate plans that would include in our next bond refinancing the inclusion of 2 million, bracketed 2 million, 4 million, or $6 million in that bond refinancing, drawing that money from budgetary reserve, from the capital reserve that we have. The rationale being that would reduce our ongoing debt in an ongoing way. So we would reduce that bolus of money that we hold in a controlled manner, potentially, and then have a recurring benefit to the district of reduced payments. I'm not saying we will do it, but one of the problems with it is it's a concept that we need to see fleshed out. And I don't like to tell Bob or ask Bob to do something where the whole board hasn't expressed some opinion. I'm not going to look for an opinion tonight, but in that we just spoke of how do we do something at a facilities committee, I want to put forward that that's something to talk about at a finance committee. So we have it in our back pocket to look at it and understand what that would look like to us in the future. We sit
Okay.
there, go ahead.
Done.
Well, that was easy.
That was easy. Any other new business? All right, we're gonna move to the committee reports.
That's how democracy works.
Denise.
By the way, republic or democracy? We are a republic.
Sorry, Jerry,
We're a
I'm taking the
representative
floor away from you
democracy.
because it's late. Denise, academic standards, please.
So tonight we met for the last time of this school year, and we had a curriculum review of math. And we were lightly attended, but I would highly, highly recommend to anybody who missed the meeting to listen to it on the replay, because it was really a fantastic, incredibly comprehensive conversation about how we deliver math. And it covered everything from how we address students that need extra supports, how we treat our gifted students, how our math specialists interact with our staff and students, the extracurricular things that our students are participating in that are math related, and went so far as to talk about how the PSSA and Keystone data is analyzed. I mean, obviously I'm, a curriculum nerd and everything, but I just thought it was a really fantastic conversation, because math is certainly one area that just gets talked about more than most in the academic realm of things. And so I highly recommend it. Because most of our staff are 10-month employees, we do not meet in the summer. So our next academic standards meeting will be in September.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Do you have anything for facilities?
We haven't met because May 12th was canceled, and our next facilities meeting, if we have one, according to Wendy,
One person.
is June 9th at 6:30 across the hall.
Where there will be a conversation about a track. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, we'll put it on the agenda.
Just so we're clear. Just so the public understands. Anything from the finance committee?
Our next meeting's the end of the month, the 26th, and Andy Rowe, transportation.
Andy Rowe is going to be there, and there might be a few other add-ons that I need to put on. I don't remember what they are right now. I apologize.
But can I add one thing? So I was at academic standards tonight, but I would like for Dr. Frazier to consider highlighting each one of our academic areas each month at a board meeting next year. So we saw, I didn't know this, but the kids in the math program completed globally and placed. So we've seen a lot of contest stuff, but I don't recall seeing a lot of global contests.
Not even place, but place really, really high.
Yes. So I was wondering if we could showcase at one meeting each month, one area of academics, and in coordination with Denise and academic standards or whatever. But I would really, I think those kids should come here and get a certificate. Their principals or teachers, their, what did Dr. Eastburn say? Their math specialist worked with, someone, whoever it is, I don't care. But over the summer, if we could think about doing that, we do English, foreign languages, whatever you want to do. But I would love to see the kids come here. I think the whole board would benefit from seeing that. I even said maybe we make it Math Month and we run their information on the front of our webpage, and run on the TV or whatever. But if you give it to them, say, okay, Dr. Eastburn's Math Month, here you go, make this happen. But anyway.
Just highlighted that, the accomplishments of our students are far vaster than what we communicate. And, that underscores why we need to continue to invest in the district and what we do to help, continue this path of achievement outside the classroom as well, because it's all supported through our program. So it's a part of an ongoing conversation about how we communicate all the good news we have to share. So we can couple that with other things.
All right, we're going to move to Mr. Tate, the policy committee. Been busy this week.
We have. That was a good meeting Tuesday night. Thanks to everybody who came to the meeting and participated. We made considerable progress on some specific policies that needed to be moved forward expeditiously. 3 of them will come up on the next board meeting agenda for a vote, I hope. And we also had good discussion about the long-term task ahead of us of going through all 300 policies over the next 3 years. So it was a fruitful meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Dr. Foster.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Thomas, MBIT, you had an exciting evening.
Yeah, we had the senior graduation ceremony. It was our kind host at Centennial at William Tennant allowed us to use their auditorium. And really, it was just a standard graduation. There were a couple of speeches by the students. There was some really great singing of the national anthem by 2 of the students. There was the singing of like the alma mater song, which I didn't know we had. But no, the kids got their diplomas. They're a really bright, talented bunch of children, and they have bright futures ahead of them. So, and our next MBIT meeting is June 13th, and you're all welcome to come.
All right, Kyle, anything from the IU?
No, we have not met since I last reported. Next meeting is on the 21st.
Thank you. Mr. Bialik, anything from the Council Rock Education Foundation?
Oh, yes. The Council Rock Education Foundation Teacher Staff Recognition Program is now in full swing, and for end of the year retirement gifts. This is a great way to honor and recognize special staff members that requires no shopping, but is very much appreciated by our staff. With your donation to the Council Rock Education Foundation, a beautiful student design card will be sent to the teachers and staff members you wish to recognize with your personal message. All donations go back into classrooms in the form of innovative gift programs. To recognize a special teacher or staff member, go to www.creducationfoundation.org and click on Teacher Staff Recognition Program under the Ways to Give tab. And that's that. And thank you, Allison McGahan, for writing that email.
Thank you, Mr. Bialik. Mr. Cox.
There was an executive session on the 31st of May on personnel. That's all I have, Mr. Block.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to our second section of public comment. Is there any public comment?
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. My discussion of track came after the bids came in. We had an April discussion where I got up in public comment and said, since the bids came in lower, could we reconsider a track? And another member of the public said, just because it came lower doesn't mean you have to spend the money. And I said, I disagreed, because track affects more students than any other sport. There's more students in track than any other sport. And a lot of students who get cut from the other sports then go over to track. So this gives them a second chance to participate in a secondary sport. At the April 5th meeting, Dr. Foster said, I want to thank Mr. Taylor for providing us with the schematic and potential places to put the middle school tracks. This was a new document. This is the document that I've been trying to get a hold of. At the April 5th meeting, Jerry Grubb said, could you put the updated drawings and the one in question on the website? Wasn't done. On May 19th, I asked again for the document. The document was never put up by the public, never discussed by the public. No one in the public has seen this document. It was given to the board. And if the board is having a discussion about whether to have track or not to have track behind closed doors or via email, and the public is not involved, what do you call that? We're talking about one document, a recent document, not one done last June. A document that was done sometime in between April and May 5th of this year. I'm glad you're having this discussion, and I wish and hope that you bring into this discussion an understanding of where they practice now, bring in the coaches of the track teams in the middle school, and bring in high school and how often they get their own track. Track has more students participating than any other sport, and who is advocating for this? Who is advocating for this? No one. Who in the administration is advocating for this? Where's the director of physical education? Who is advocating? No, we're concerned about a baseball field that you play one season with not that many kids. Don't you understand how important it is to a child or a kid who can't make the football team and can't make the baseball team to be able to participate in the sport? And as a parent, wouldn't you want them running around on a level surface and being safe?
Is there any further public comment? Oh, I thought you were going to really name it. Wow. What a fake out. All right, with that, we'll move to board comment, and I'll start just by saying today at the Holland Middle School and at the Newtown Middle School, we had the groundbreaking ceremony, so you might see some folks around the table wearing their hard hats. But I want to take an opportunity just to thank the administration, Dr. Frazier, Doug and his team, the principals. They put together a really nice ceremony recognizing the start of these projects. We were able to be joined and had some kids participate, and had some of the partners from the local townships and some of the state legislature to be with us. So it was a lot of fun. It was hot. It was hot, but it was a lot of fun. So Dr. Frazier, Doug, thanks for putting that on today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the grand opening, which I'm sure will be a much bigger show. Any other board comment?
Just one on the same topic, and I'll get out of your way. And it was nice to see Holland and Richboro Middle Schools playing together at the bands. That was really, whoever thought of that, great job.
Mr. Grubb?
I am, just people make comments at the board table, at the podium. I am unaware of any document that was circulated regarding the tracks after the document of June 1st of last year. So if there's some allegation that we received the document after June 1st. The one I had spoken to from the table the other week was the one of June 1st, 2015. So if there's an allegation that there's another document, I'm unaware of a later document produced sometime between May of this year and now. I don't know of any document that was produced.
But there was one.
There was there?
Yeah.
There was a memo shared with the board after some questions came up.
From May of last year?
This year again.
Okay, I don't remember that, sorry.
Yeah. But again, it was a document shared with the board.
I don't remember.
Any other comment? All right, meeting adjourned.
I think the only document we have to sign is the budget.